Okay, very good morning to you. Welcome to the Newsroom show, where we're with you until midday today. Of course, massive news day ahead of us. The world awaits with bated breath as the Donald steps into the firing line, as it were.
It's a big day for the U.S. and not just for the U.S., for the entire world. We're waiting with bated breath as well, of course. You know that Donald Trump, he's got a lot of things on his mind. He wants America out of a free trade deal. He wants to reduce environmental protection. He wants to scrap Obamacare. He wants to also build a wall between the U.S. and Mexico and establish a cyber defense team.
Yeah, he wants a lot of things, but what is he gonna get? Of course, he's made the ultimate promise to make America great again. Whatever that means, I don't really know what that means. Make America great at the expense of the rest of the world, I suppose, is what it looks like. So we ask you the question, and it's a straight-up question. Can the president-elect, Donald Trump, yes, that guy, can he make America great again? That's the question on our poll. Let's have a look at how you guys are voting and also have a look at what you guys are tweeting us with regards to this. Elvis, there we go.
There you go. 23% are saying Donald Trump will make America great again. 77%, well, 3/4 are saying he won't achieve that. No. 147 votes in, 23 hours left. You can still continue. You can also tweet us on that subject. Will Trump make America great again?
I'm worried that there are 23% of people in South Africa that think along the same lines as Donald Trump. Actually, which is very concerning of us. But let's have a look at what you guys are telling us.
Spoke says, never America will drift back to the Stone Ages. Well, there you got it from Spokes. He's outspoken.
Gaulubeke Lungani Ndumiso says, a great imperialist. Yes, that's kind of on point, I would say.
Gods, I love Maggie Makomo says, a big no. Well,
America first, yes. This one from Ronnie Lebdwaba. He says, Newsroom, there is nothing wrong. President's resident was visited by ad hoc committee and the public protector. Patlane is not special. Well, okay, that's not about the president, guys.
That's on the question that we posed to you, because we're coming back home in terms of our question. We're focusing on the acting National Police Commissioner, Komotso Patlane, who was threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, IPID, for raiding his home. Now, they, as you know, they're investigating allegations that Patlane bought his luxurious house and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activity.
Yeah, it's been an interesting development yesterday of what's going on within South Africa's protection agencies, really. So what do you make of this IPID raid on the Pretoria home of the acting National Police Commissioner, Komotso Patlane? It certainly puts it in a different light, what's going on within the police.
Completely different light, and of course, you know, where do you draw the line? But we'll come to that in a short while. Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, time to take a look at the news headlines. The acting National Police Commissioner Komotso Patlane is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. And the West African military force intervening in the Gambia's presidential crisis says it has halted its advance into the country. ECOWAS regional group says that President Yahya Jammeh has been given until midday today local time to step down. And as you heard, the stage is set for Donald Trump to ascend to the highest office in the United States. Now that's all coming up in a short while, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendo Makhamate what's happening on the sports front. Good morning.
A rip-roaring start we've had to this year. I tell you what, if you're Zimbabwean, bring out the calculators.
Yeah, we support Zimbabwe and we support them right out of the AFCON.
Well said, Evan. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
It's on target. It's a cracker. And it's two. And it's Henri Saivet.
The Warriors of Zimbabwe are teetering on the edge of elimination from AFCON 2017 after a 2-0 beating by the group-topping Lions of Teranga.
I don't think there's even a recipe to you know, for your first game to ever calm those nerves, and you probably won't sleep the night before, but hopefully they can get over that and pull out a good game.
And the new look Proteas side takes to the field against the battered and bruised Sri Lanka in the first of 3 T20s this evening.
We are proud as the first Chinese company that have a 3-term, 12 years commitment, and we were making sure this thing work.
And Chinese billionaire Jack Ma's e-commerce company Alibaba signs a major sponsorship deal with the Olympics. All this and more I've got for you later on at 10:40 in more detail. But for now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Here at home, the acting National Police Commissioner Komotso Paslani is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. The IPID pounced on Paslani's property in an upmarket estate north of Pretoria yesterday afternoon. IPID is looking into allegations that Paslani bought his luxurious house and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activities. His house is rumored to be worth around 8 million rand, which would suggest a mortgage loan way above his earning potential. Paslani has denied all allegations against him. The acting police head has served with a search warrant, which mentions a sound system purchased for more than 80,000 rand, for which he provided proof of payment from his private bank account to IPID. Paslani is accusing the police watchdog of humiliating him and tipping off the media about the raid. Parliament's ad hoc committee probing the affairs of the SABC enters the second day of deliberations on its working document today. The committee will continue to look at the observations and recommendations listed in the document. Yesterday, committee members identified various contradictions that were made by some of the witnesses during the inquiry. Moving on now, the West African military force intervening in the Gambia's presidential crisis says it has halted its advance into the country. The ECOWAS regional group says Yahya Jammeh has been given until midday local time to stop claiming to be the president. Yahya Jammeh has refused to leave the office despite losing the elections to Adama Barrow, who has been sworn in at the Gambian embassy in Senegal.
Fellow Gambian, I hereby make a special appeal to ECOWAS, AU and UN, particularly the Security Council, to support the government and people of the Gambia in enforcing their will, restore their sovereignty and constitutional legitimacy. I therefore call on all civilians and military personnel of the state to support my presidency, since it is built on a constitutional foundation. They are assured that they will not be subjected to any injustice and discrimination, but would be provided with better working conditions and terms of service.
Now, we'll keep you abreast of that story as it unfolds today. It's on the tipping edge, that is the Gambia. And as you know, by now, the African Union as well as ECOWAS has given their support to the incoming president. So we'll keep you abreast. But right now, as you know, we are doing that poll, and we're conducting that poll on Donald Trump. He's ascending to the highest seat in office today in America. And we're asking you the question, will he make America great again? So far, 77% of you are saying no, 23% are saying yes. Well, 167 votes, and you can keep them coming and also comment on that question. So let's start off that conversation, because that is our focus today, isn't it, Eben?
Yeah, it's the absolute focus today, and I think that poll is a kind of guide as to how the rest of the world views Donald Trump as well. Up to 80% are mistrustful of him, especially after all the kinds of things that he's been saying. But the president-elect, that's Donald Trump, will enter the highest office in Washington later today, sharply critical of the U.S. intelligence community, which is accused of spreading fake news, compared them to Nazi Germany, while only recently conceding that Russia carried out cyber attacks that might have undermined the results of the presidential election late last year. Our U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce Pease sent us this report.
President-elect Trump has taken some heat from the most senior echelons of the United States intelligence community, who have urged the New York politician to take more seriously the security issues facing this country. This, of course, comes after some pushback from the Trump transition team against intelligence conclusions that Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the hacks of the Democratic National Committee to help Trump win the 2016 election.
The Assad regime and Russia appear dead set.
The outgoing United States ambassador to the UN addressed this issue speaking at the Atlantic Council in Washington this week.
My aim here to theorize about which, if any, of these motives lie behind the Russian government's actions, which not only threaten our democracy, but the entire order upon which our security and our prosperity depends. It is instead to ask, what are we going to do to address this threat? First, we must continue to work in a bipartisan fashion to determine the full extent of Russia's interference in our recent elections, identify the vulnerabilities of our democratic system, and come up with targeted recommendations for preventing future attacks.
A report by the U.S. intelligence community found that Russia's goal was to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency.
Please be seated.
This was a recent hearing of Trump's nominee to head the Department of Homeland Security, General John Kelly.
Do you accept the conclusions of the intelligence interference in our election?
With high confidence.
The president-elect, who has made his intentions clear to seek better working relations between Washington and Moscow, has received increased scrutiny about his plans, given revelations regarding Russia's alleged role in the U.S. election, an accusation Moscow has denied. While belatedly acknowledging that Russia likely hacked the DNC, Trump angrily denounced intelligence agencies over leaked claims that he had been caught in a compromising position in Russia and that the Kremlin knew all about it.
I think it's a disgrace that information would be let out. I saw the information, I read the information outside of that meeting. It's all fake news, it's phony stuff. It didn't happen, but I read what was released, and I think it's a disgrace. I think it's an absolute disgrace. As far as hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people.
Outgoing Central Intelligence Agency Director John Brennan said the president-elect lacked a broad understanding of the threat Russia posed to the world and belittled his fondness for talking and tweeting, arguing it was not in the best interests of the country. Sherman Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
Now, during the 2016 presidential campaign and in the run-up to his inauguration, Donald Trump consistently expressed his desire to improve the severely frayed U.S.-Russian relations. At his first press conference in nearly 6 months, Trump denounced newly released and unverified reports that Russia compiled tawdry or cheap information to compromise him and that his campaign officials colluded with Russian intelligence. Will the relations between Russia and the U.S. improve under Trump's watch? And is Russia willing to work together with Trump? Now, to answer all these questions, we are joined from our Pretoria studio by the Russian ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Mikhail Petrakov. Very good morning to you, Mr. Petrakov, and thank you for joining us on Newsroom.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here.
Mr. Petrakov, these allegations that Russia interfered in the U.S. elections, how do you respond to that?
First, let me reiterate the position which we've been repeatedly stating, that the Russian side will be prepared to work with any democratically elected president of the United States, the president elected by the people. We do not have any preferences. What you are saying about is just allegations of fake news with no proofs. You know, all this reminds me of another story dating back to the year 2001, when the then Secretary of State Colin Powell was stating that all 16 American intelligence services are in agreement that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
14 years on, he went on television saying that had we known that the intelligence information was incorrect, we wouldn't have gone to Iraq. Today you will hear the same words, that all 17 intelligence agencies are in agreement on Russian alleged interference. But no proof, so let's wait for another 14 years maybe.
I want to ask you, it seems as if there's an existing relationship between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Have the two ever met?
No. No. They never met. They do not know each other.
Where does this idea of this bromance, if one can call it then, where do you think this comes from?
Let me state first our position. We, as I've said, are prepared to work with any American administration, and we are watching quite closely all public signals which we were getting from Donald Trump and his team. We do not know much about his foreign policy preferences or estimates. So we believe that by Northern Spring we shall get a more clear picture on that. We also do not underestimate the degree of continuity enshrined in the American political system during the period of transition from one administration to another. But we are prepared to work on the basis of equality and mutual respect of one another's interests. So I even would not touch upon this issue of bromance here.
We're just watching pictures now of course, Barack Obama, his final day in office. His last act of this administration was to expel 35 Russian diplomats from the US in response to these hacking allegations. How did Russia receive this decision by Barack Obama?
You know, with the Obama administration, we had 8 years divided in two very different periods. The first 4 years were, or rather they passed under the sign of resetting, an attempt to reset the relations. The other 4 years was a consistent work by the Obama administration on destroying the edifice and even the foundation of Russia-US relationship. And the fact you've mentioned, the decision on sending off 35 Russian diplomats was just one of the acts in the long chain of acts, including sanctions, including in deployment of ballistic missile defense elements close to our border, including the deployment of US troops in Europe close to our borders. So as I've said, this is an event in the whole chain of the same. But while formulating our reaction to sending off our diplomats, we took into account that it was the action of the outgoing administration. So we did not do anything in response, waiting for the incoming administration to deal with this matter. Well, basically it was not good because these diplomats were sent off right on the New Year Eve with their children. The Obama administration prevented us from using two facilities which are usually used by our children for winter holidays. So you can judge for yourself.
Yeah, that's never good. Never good. Wrong time of the year. I want to ask you, though, are you hopeful of a cessation in aggressive posture and improved relations under the next administration?
Well, the hope is there. At least Donald Trump spoke about the necessity to engage in a dialogue. This does not mean that we shall agree on each and every point, but dialogue is always good because it always helps to move forward. When Donald Trump was elected, President Putin sent him a message of congratulation. expressing hope that under new administration, by working together, we shall be able to lift our relationship out of the situation of crisis.
Do you foresee a step-by-step lifting of sanctions maybe in exchange for Moscow fulfilling its obligation under the Minsk agreement as we're talking about what's happening in Ukraine, of course?
The matter of sanctions is not our concern. We did not introduce them. It was the decision of our Western partners, and we do not discuss sanctions with them in any aspect, be it Ukraine or anything.
Finally, Your Excellency, your message to the world with regards to America today and the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Russia is very much interested in solid, practical, pragmatic, good relations with the United States, because both our countries are very important for this world. We hold great responsibility for peace and stability in the world. And we do hope that under new administration we shall move forward in improving our relationship, which will be beneficial for the world as a whole.
Your Excellency, I thank you for joining us today. That's the Russian ambassador to South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Mikhail Petrakov, coming to you live from our studios in Pretoria, talking about, well, ahead of the inauguration of Donald Trump, which will happen, of course, in Washington in a couple of hours' time. But lots going on, as you can imagine, on social media. It's all about the Trump inauguration. That's the hashtag. If you want to interact with it, that's the one to look at for what's happening today. Of course, a historic moment for the American nation as the world, and the world really, as Donald Trump becomes the 45th American president. There's an image of the new first family next. Let's have a look at that image. There we go. It's extended family. Yeah, it's one of a few families he's had. We'll take a look at the family. The Trump family is a little bit later. Of course, preparations are underway for the big ceremony. As you can believe, security will be paramount. Of course, there are lots of anti-Trump protesters who are also gearing themselves up and heading towards Washington. This is the map of where the planned protests against Trump will be. There have been several anti-Trump marches this week alone, and many celebrities have attended. On a lighter note, Trump's son tweeted a picture of the inauguration cake, and some people are selling Trump merchandise ahead of the historic ceremony. Even the bikers for Trump were out in a bike yesterday showing their support. Now, Trump posted this tweet, his famous words that will become his historic one-liner. To the American people, I have no doubt that we will make America great again. Of course, that's our question on the poll, so send us your tweet as well. But it seems that hashtag Obama, well, will be missed. Here you see an image of an Obama supporter saying thank you. And Michelle Obama at Flotus has had a few emotional and sentimental tweets this week. Here's one that's rather special. Being your first lady has been the honor of a lifetime, she said. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Lovely picture there, shot, well, from the White House, watching over the White House lawns it is. Of course, here back in South Africa, we have another man that has a date with destiny today. Yes, the Gambian nation has a new president. Adama Barrow is the guy who was inaugurated in Senegal yesterday due to tensions in the Gambia following former President Yahya Jammeh's refusal to step down. Here's a wonderful picture of Barrow's first ladies, mind you. However, some West African troops have arrived at the border of the Gambia, preparing to unseat the stubborn president. Of course, we're supporting Zimbabwe, and as truth be told, they also out now. AFCON 27, Zimbabwe out this after Senegal beat them 2-0, making them the first to qualify for the semi-finals. Last night, Algeria lost to Tunisia by 2-1 as well. Then we move to Italy now, where an avalanche struck a hotel, leaving up to 35 people trapped. Search operations are underway there. Let's hope that it's not too big tragedy unfolding. Back home, people are talking about, well, this story. Acting National Police Commissioner Khomotso Patlane, who is threatening to sue IPID for raiding his home yesterday. They're looking into allegations that Patlane bought his luxury house and other expensive items like an 80,000 rand sound system with money obtained from corrupt dealings. Donald McPherry says, top billing, just look at the houses of white people. Let a black guy like Patlane build a house like this, and everyone calls it corruption. There you go. Says, if you play sad music on an 80,000 rand sound system, it stops and gives you counseling. Yeah. Anyhow, we've got an exclusive interview with the police commissioner today on the show. He's promised us he'll be in our Pretoria studios at 10 o'clock. So don't miss that interview. A story always has two sides. Let's hear from the commissioner himself on the Newsroom show what he thinks and what he says. Of course, we ask you the question, what do you make of the IPID raid on the home of the acting National Police Commissioner, Khomotso Patlane? Do you think it's irregular? Do you think it's out of hand? Do you think it was within the rights? Anyhow, that's what we want you to tweet us, because we'd love to hear what you say. Now, this one from Temba Motweni. He says, Newsroom, did they find what they were looking for? We don't know yet, Temba. We don't know yet. We'll find out. Johan van Skalkberg says, Newsroom, if they acted on evidence and have a non-political motivation, I respect their efforts. And let's call it guts, he says. But it has to be qualified then. I write what I like, says Newsroom. He must explain where he got the money to build an 8 million rand mansion. Yep, we'll ask that question today, no doubt. Goes on, I write what I like. Says, Newsroom, there's nothing wrong. He's not special. Interesting. We are all special, aren't we? We are all special. Some more special than others. Now, the picture of the day. This one comes from Umzile, and it's captioned, Caged Woman. Yes, this caused all this of a stir yesterday. The caged woman said, I sat in the cage because it was hot, and the cage had air conditioning. Yes, talking about, of course, a black Twitter, but he's racist and the cage is black, they say. Yeah, only in South Africa, I tell you, we have no chill in this country. Zero chill we have. Anyhow, our comment of the day now comes from Doolizzle, who says, thank you for leading this country with such great class, integrity, equality, and diversity. Thank you, Obama. Yes, in the rest of the world, we'll say, well, Barack Obama, for the 8 years that you were in power, sir, you dropped a bomb on innocent people every 20 minutes. That's something to think about, isn't it? Now, let's take a look at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa. We'll start in Johannesburg, where terror suspect twins Brandon Lee and Tony Lee Tulsi are expected to appear in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court. The twins were arrested in July during raids in New Clare here in Johannesburg. They face 3 counts of contravening the Protection of Constitutional Democracy Against Terrorist and Related Activities Act. The brothers were allegedly linked to ISIS and were allegedly planning to set off explosives at a US embassy and Jewish institutions here in South Africa. Then down in the Eastern Cape, a Lusikisiki police officer is expected to appear in court after he allegedly extorted a bribe from a complainant and he was caught in a police sting. The warrant officer allegedly extorted 1,500 rand from a vehicle owner after an accident. Interesting. We'll keep you updated. We'll tell you how those stories develop. Of course, there's a lot happening. Now, our digital department, thought that we should get to know some key facts about President-elect Donald Trump, who will enter the highest office in the land today. Let's get to know this man just a little bit more. Here's some of the details. Some call it dodgy. I don't think so. He's only had 3 marriages. He first married Ivana Zelnicek. Yes, but she became the famous Ivana Trump, of course. In 1977, they were, of course, divorced. In 1990, after he bought millions of pairs of shoes. Then came along Marla Maples Trump, married her in 1993, but soon they were divorced too in 1999. Finally, or so the world hopes, Melania Trump married in 2005. She's the first lady of the American nation today. Trump has also got, well, he's got 5 children. Let's have a look at, well, all the children. There we go. The youngest, of course, was born in 2006. You'll see at the bottom. We'll get there. He has 5 children. Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, and Barron. The baby was born 2006. Hey, late work in his life for the Donald there. Now, despite Trump being well known for as being a grand businessman, he has faced some serious cases of bankruptcy in his career, in his life. In 1990, he had nearly $1 billion in personal debt. Now, Trump reached an agreement with bankers allowing him to avoid declaring bankruptcy. Then, 2 years later, the Trump Taj Mahal filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The following year, the Trump Plaza and the Trump Castle casinos also filed for bankruptcy. Then, 2009, he announces his resignation from his position as chairman of the Trump Entertainment Resorts. Days later, the companies filed for bankruptcy as well. Interesting. Thank you to our digital department. You can go to our website, sabc.co.za, and you'll get all of the Trumponomics, as it's called today, all the latest, what you should be looking out for, what's happening in Washington. Mind you, while we're talking about that, let's have a look at live pictures coming out of Washington right now. What is happening in Washington, guys? This is in the middle of the night there right now. Let's have a look. Where are the live pictures, guys? Show us the live picture. There you go. Beautiful picture there. Of course, that's the iconic Senate building in Washington, D.C. Yes, it's the middle of the night, 3 in the morning. As you can see, this Capitol Hill, as they call it, will be the venue for the inauguration of the Don. Donald Trump tweeted, he said, "I hope it doesn't rain, because if it does, people will see whether my hair is real or not." How do you like that one? Anyhow, we're going to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom. It's all about the Donald today. After a short break.
I don't know if I'm going to succeed, but I want you to tell us, who are these 3 people that you have opened corruption charges against at the Brooklyn police station? How senior are they?
Very.
Are these people who were serving in the political office of the executive mayor?
Yes.
Which means they are no longer working for the city now.
Well, I can tell you that one of them is actually finding themselves employed in another municipality.
You are not going to tell us the names?
No, you're not going to get names from me.
Are people still getting free Wi-Fi in Tshwane?
People are still getting free Wi-Fi, and we will actually make it one of the basic services that our residents will get.
Yeah, welcome back. You're watching the Donald Trump Show. Now, in the first 3 months of his presidency, President-elect Donald Trump wants to pull America out of a free trade deal, reduce environmental protections, and establish a cyber defense team. The president-elect may also try to scrap Obamacare and appoint a Supreme Court justice who shares his view of the world. Now, a little bit earlier, we spoke to Republican political consultant Matthew Klink about his first view on Donald Trump when he announced he was running for president.
I, like most people in the United States, were quite shocked that someone like Donald Trump decided to run for presidency In fact, no one really took him seriously, but he consistently overcame every obstacle that was thrown his way, and even a lot of self-imposed gaffes to win a very competitive Republican primary. And then, as the world knows, he defeated Hillary Rodham Clinton, who we were told in America was a sure thing 2 years ago.
What was it that turned the American people against the Republicans, you think? Against the Democrats, rather?
Well, I think that there was a general dissatisfaction in the lion's share of the country, particularly in the middle of America, that the quote-unquote economic recovery that President Obama and Mrs. Clinton were talking about didn't reach the people, that it was very skewed to the higher-end cities like Los Angeles or New York or Seattle or Chicago, but that the vast majority of middle-class America was not faring any better under an Obama presidency, and Hillary Clinton promised 4 more years of the same.
Now, the former U.S. President Barack Obama has admitted that the transition period leading to Trump's inauguration has been unusual. And he warned that the president-elect's improv style may or might not translate well into the presidency. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, I do agree with President Obama that Donald Trump's style is quite unusual. In fact, he can be downright offensive at times, which is very off-putting to a number of people. I mean, let's not forget, during the presidential campaign, he offended Latinos, African American, women, people with disabilities. And every time people said, oh, this was the gap that was going to do him in, it didn't affect him. Now, everything changes tomorrow because he now becomes the 45th president of the United States, and the bar is much higher. Everybody will take what he says much more literally than they did during the campaign. And that's where I think President Obama was expressing his concern, because Barack Obama is so precise with his use of language. He's a very effective communicator.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen it in Europe, and we've also seen it now with the American elections, the rise of populism. Was that perhaps part and parcel of his election victory?
And most absolutely was. And even if you look back in the Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton faced a progressive populist by the name of Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump is more of an authoritarian populist. He's very fiery. He uses pretty harsh rhetoric. And he is clearly more of a command and control type of a person, but he really played up that populist feeling in middle America that, frankly, they were very frustrated that they felt they were being passed over by the Obama economy. Now, the question remains, is Donald Trump the person to solve this problem? These people in the middle of America really have been left behind, not just by Barack Obama, but by George Bush before him, Bill Clinton before him, and George Herbert Walker Bush before that. So solving what Mr. Trump says he's going to solve will not be an easy undertaking.
Now President-elect Donald Trump has said in several occasions that it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Is the American nation divided, you think, and can he unite the divisions between black and white in America?
That's the big question that exists. You know, racial tensions under President Obama were pretty high, especially toward the end of his second 4-year term, or his 8-year time in the office of the presidency. And Donald Trump has really won the presidency by dividing America and making sure that he got the number of electoral votes he needed. But let's not forget, he lost the popular vote by almost 3 million votes to Mrs. Clinton. So he has a long way to go to heal divides that exist between the Republican Party and African Americans, between the Republican Party and Latinos, which it's going to be an incredibly difficult undertaking for him in the next 4 years.
The war between Mexico and the U.S., is that still on the cards, you think?
Well, I'm sure, I'm sure it made it even into South Africa, where Donald Trump said he was going to build a wall to keep Mexicans from entering the United States illegally, to which the Mexican president responded in a very impolite manner. He said, blank you, that's not going to happen. Now, Donald Trump has now backslid a little bit and says it will be a virtual wall in some places or a fence in others. But Mexico is America's largest trading partner. So it's really not practical for us to say that we're going to put up a wall and keep the Mexicans out. We need Mexico as much as Mexico needs us. And I think that the reality of that will certainly set in for a President Trump when he takes office tomorrow and he begins to look at the economics behind the U.S.-Mexican trade and border and exchange of people.
Obamacare, which is the legacy project of President Barack Obama, will that be perhaps looked at by Donald Trump? He did say that they don't really care much about Obamacare.
Yeah, Obamacare, as it is currently in existence, will cease to be probably within the next 2 weeks. The Republican Congress has the votes to repeal 60% of it. So what they'll do is they'll repeal the parts that they can repeal, and then they'll spend the better part of the next 2 years figuring out a replacement for the healthcare legislation that really was a centerpiece of President Barack Obama's legacy. The problem with Obamacare, though, is that it became not affordable and people just simply didn't have healthcare choices. All that being said, it did provide 20 million Americans who previously lacked health insurance with health insurance. So any Republican plan that replaces Obamacare will hopefully keep what Obamacare did right. And also, unlike Obamacare, which got only Democratic Party votes, hopefully they will get both Republican and Democrat Party votes.
Looking into the future now, Matt, what do you think of the cabinet that Donald Trump has put together and assembled, and what advice would you give to the president-elect?
Well, going with the cabinet first. So Donald Trump has some incredibly qualified, competent, accomplished people on his cabinet. His Secretary of Defense, for example, General Mattis from the United States Marine Corps. His nickname is Mad Dog. He is beloved amongst the troops in America, and he will be a very strong Secretary of Defense. The Democrats are currently holding back approval for some of Mr. Trump's other cabinet nominations, most notably Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who is a former chief executive officer for ExxonMobil. But the Republicans hold a 50-vote majority in the Senate, so all of his picks should get approved. And the advice to Mr. Trump, one, he unfortunately keeps his counsel very close, and I think he really only listens to himself. But my only advice to him, having now been involved in politics for 25 years, is he now holds the top office in the United States. He needs to look and sound and act more presidential to command the respect on the world stage that I believe an American president deserves.
Yeah, that's the key question, isn't it? Anyhow, we ask you the question, will he make America great again? That's on our poll. We've updated it. You guys are voting. Let's have a look what you guys are voting and what you're saying with regards to the Donald, as it were. 189 votes in. Will Trump make America great again? 3/4 say, no, he won't. I'm more concerned about the 25% that say, yes, he will. Anyhow, 4 comments coming in. Let's have a look at your comments on Donald Trump. Hannes says, Newsroom, nope, here comes World War III. That's an extreme view, Hannes, but yeah, a lot of people are thinking like that. Tebatso are saying, time will tell, but like his predecessor, he may realize how limited his authority is within a month and crumble under. Yes, that's an interesting take. Gay Batman says, if you mean by great that he will bully the minority communities, lie to the public, and employ the least qualified cabinet, he says, here, big business are all in cabinet at the moment. Spoo Zwane says, Trump, he's not showing respect to the black Americans, and he said he's going to send all blacks to Africa. Yeah, sounds a bit like the Buramach who wanted to send all blacks back up the N1 into Africa, and of course all Indians back into the ocean on the boats to India. It's that kind of mentality, isn't it? Well, that's the kind of thing that a lot of people are fearing around the world right now. It's the bigotry element. But let's take a look at some of Trump's quotes that he put forward in the run-up to this. Now, this is what he said. Donald Trump is calling for a complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. This courtesy of our digital department. On Hillary Clinton, he said she's got experience, but it's bad experience. And this country cannot afford to have another 4 years of that experience. That's what he said on Hillary Clinton. And this, of course, is the one that stood out for most people, especially those living in Mexico. He says, when Mexico send their people, they're not sending their best. They're sending drugs. They're sending crime. He went on to say, let's build a wall and keep them out. What does that remind you of? Where did we have a wall again? I'll leave you to think about that. We'll be back with Professor Parsons, who's going to talk about the Trumponomics factor after a short break.
R1.4 billion was raised to build the institution. Additional funding came from ordinary South Africans.
It's been heartwarming to have seen the project from 2009 when the first sorting happened to see it today being completed. Indeed, this is going to be our benchmark going forward. It's just been incredible.
Jammeh has said in the past that only Allah can remove him from office, and once claimed he would rule the tiny riverside West African nation for 1 billion years.
We are going to win this election.
Even if we avoid a downgrade, we're still hovering very dangerously close to junk, and that'll of course affect markets next year.
Our markets are actually already punishing us for a downgrade that may or may not come.
Woods made a blistering start but eventually slumped to a 1 over par 73 and is 9 shots behind the leader and his compatriot JB Holmes.
You know, I just made some really, if you look at it, some really silly mistakes. Mistakes I don't normally make, but I hadn't played in a while, and you know, unfortunately I made those mistakes. I can clean that up.
This week's statistical picture focused mainly on the publication of the mining output figures for November 2016, as well as the latest retail sales. Now, we also got the annual headline inflation number for December. Then there was the release of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Trade Conditions Survey. As a whole, these various trends seem to reflect only small changes to the current economic outlook. Significantly also, two dominating events this week. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, which ended yesterday, and the inauguration of the US President-elect Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. today. So, to unpack all these matters for us, we are joined here by Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance in our weekly slot of the economy. Professor, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis.
Now, first and foremost, let's begin at home and starting with the highlighting some of the latest inflation figures. Again, this week, we now see headline inflation accelerated to 6.8% last month from 6.6% in November, which is a little bit higher than the consensus of 6.5%. Why is that?
Well, Elvis, as we also discussed last week,
the inflation story is not over yet. What has happened here is primarily the food price impact. We're seeing the aftershocks of the drought are still coming through in our price levels, and people see this in their supermarkets and in the restaurants and so forth. So it's not an entire surprise. It still leaves inflation, although at the upper end of the inflation target, it leaves it where broadly the Reserve Bank has expected it to be. And the question now is whether later in the year, as the weather conditions improve, so we'll see an improvement in the rate of inflation. So I think it's still manageable, and I think most observers think that the Reserve Bank will see it as such, but obviously it will make them cautious, and they will be very careful about whether there's any further upside risk in the inflation outlook. But at the moment, I would think those factors probably explain these numbers that we're looking at about inflation.
And then, of course, we have the SARB Monetary Policy Committee meeting again next week, Tuesday, which will probably have a look at the inflation concerns there. How do you see the outlook for interest rates now? And do you think that we can even expect a cut perhaps later this year?
Well, I think, as most other observers think, that when the Monetary Policy Committee meets next week, they're going to look at both the global situation and the domestic situation. They'll look at these inflation numbers, they'll look at the state of the economy, and I think they'll sit tight. Certainly that's what I think they ought to do. There are just too many cross currents. As I've said, as far as the inflation outlook is concerned, although they will be very cautious and they will be watching it, they'll probably say, look, we will sit tight, we will leave interest rates unchanged for the moment. Whether interest rates will come down later in the year, well, that's another issue. There's been some debate that eventually we can accept that both inflation and interest rates have now peaked. And we ought to be looking forward to lower levels of inflation and lower levels of interest rates. I think it's a little premature at this point. I think we've still got to get through certain global factors, which we'll come to. And also, we want to be sure that inflation, or that the rate of inflation, is on the decline. So I think that's the outlook as far as interest rates are concerned on what we know at the moment.
The World Economic Forum was this week. Responsive and responsible leadership, that was the theme. What was your overall impression?
Well, I think all the delegates to the World Economic Forum this week found that the world they were looking at now, compared with a year ago when they were there, was extremely difficult and very different indeed. And this simply means that in the past 12 months, you've seen new challenges to globalization, to geopolitics, as a result mainly of Brexit and the accession of President Trump to the US presidency. So a lot of the interviews that one saw being done for those delegates at the World Economic Forum meeting, they all put uncertainty and unpredictability very high on the list at the moment. But I must just add that at the same time, the economic outlook as such, as we got from the International Monetary Fund on the eve of the World Economic Forum meeting, was that the outlook is still very positive. In other words, they are sticking by their forecasts of world growth being positive, that we can expect the commodity prices to look a little better, and that world economic growth will probably come out at something like 3.5%. So those numbers haven't changed. The uncertainties really relate to the broader issues which still have to play themselves out.
Talking about unpredictability, Trumponomics, Donald Trump is being inaugurated today. How do you see this, the implications of him being the US president?
Well, I think we're going to talk a lot about Trumponomics in the year ahead. We're into uncharted waters here. It's very difficult to assess exactly where the chips will fall. I think one has to try and draw a line between what is said when you are campaigning and in transition and what you say when you're in government, because those realities are very different to what you say when you're still campaigning or you're still waiting to take office. I think from an economic point of view, the four issues that are very important from his point of view will be what he said about infrastructure development in the United States. He wants to cut taxes, he wants to deregulate, and of course, the whole trade outlook,
yes,
which affects the world and South Africa. So I think these are all issues where he'll be tested once he's in office, because other realities will have to prevail, and we must also understand there will be checks and balances in the political system. He will not necessarily be able to do everything he wants to do, but I think the bottom line has got to be, you've now got to give him an opportunity to show whether he can govern, and that is a stern test, as any occupant of the White House in earlier years will, of course, testify.
Now, on Monday, Professor, we'll be touching on a very topical issue, and that is the credit rating agency Moody's and Standard & Poor. They've come under fire, mainly as a result of the now being heavily fined for issuing those false credit ratings. They call it the Great Recession of 2008. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the point of departure must be one's hopes that, like all people who make mistakes, they have learned from it. I mean, this was a decade ago. They made some big mistakes, and these have to be corrected. And I think, if anything, they're now oversensitive and making absolutely sure that they get their narratives right. It's very important that the credit rating agencies retain credibility just as much as they urge credibility on their clients. So I think it's a two-way trip. But the fact remains that it is wrong then to say, oh, but then we should just dismiss them or reject them. Because if you don't have rating agencies, you can't borrow money. A government or corporate that seeks to be rated cannot borrow and cannot loan funds if they're not rated where that is appropriate. So I think we've got to make sure that they do their job properly, and that we ensure that whether it's a country, whether it's South Africa or it's a corporate, that they do their job properly, but we still need to take them seriously. And I think for South Africa, we have something that we have to learn from them, and we've got to remember also that when they say something, it's not something that falls like manna from heaven. There are, in fact, resonating many things that are being said within South Africa. So I think what I'm saying is, the bottom line is there's still a role for them, but their role has to be as credible as the client's behavior that they insist ought to be corrected.
Professor, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here. That was economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SBG, in our weekly slot of the economy.
Yeah, Elvis, I still want to talk to the Prof about those dodgy ratings agencies he's talking about. But we'll get there, Prof. We'll get there in due course. Still got a lot of time this year to get to grips with that one. But the big story today in South Africa is, what do you make of the IPID raid on the home of the acting National Police Commissioner? Khomotso Patlane, he's in our studios in Pretoria. He's waiting for us. Shortly after 10 o'clock, we'll be speaking to him. So don't miss this interview. The man himself will speak to us here on Newsroom and give us his side of the story. If you have any questions, tweet us your questions, and I'll put it to our acting National Police Commissioner with regards to that raid. I know you guys are talking to us and you're tweeting us quite a bit with regards to, the raid that happened in Pretoria yesterday. This one from Sipho. Sipho says, look, we all want good things for our families. Let the IPID compile evidence first. After that, they can start talking. That is the view of Sipho. Muli Malong says, we get arrested and our houses get raided daily by the very police brigade that Patlane is heading. What's special about Patlane? Asks Muli Malong. Then Sipho comes back. He says, in our country today, once you become something or being successful, know that you will be confiscated. Says Sipho. He comes back. Bongani Mdluli says, Newsroom acting police commissioner bought one of many music systems in that shop. Who bought the others? Are they all investigated? Fair question, Bongani Mdluli. That's where we are right now. Top of the hour, just after 10 o'clock. Oh, the time factor here is a bit of a problem, but stay with us. Shortly, we will get, the word himself from the police commissioner. But let's go to Tsietse Monare, who's, he's having a little bit of a breakdown because we have a little bit behind schedule. But Tsietse, give us the weather, please.
Welcome from the weather desk. Let's take a look at this weather for you. Some rainy conditions expected to the eastern side of southern Africa, especially for KwaZulu-Natal and over Malawi, including some parts of Mozambique and Zimbabwe. Those partly cloudy skies move all the way towards the western side. But clear skies are expected for the Northern Cape, and possibilities of veld fires are expected there. So please be extra careful. And also severe thunderstorms are expected over the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Look at your temperatures. There are 30 degrees, 35 towards Upington. Quite a hot day also towards the south southwestern parts. Temperatures ranging between 25 and about 30 degrees, and it's going to get even hotter over the next couple of days. Southern Africa, in fact, temperatures there sort of staying over those lower 30s and upper 20s. You'll see just around 28 for Bulawayo, 34 towards Gaborone, and it is expected to remain hot for the rest of the weekend. Over the central parts of Africa, also do expect partly cloudy conditions and a bit more rain now towards the western side into Brazzaville, Libreville, as well as all the way towards Kinshasa. But the sunny skies will be the order of the day for most parts of the central part of Africa. And then Gabon should experience a little bit of drizzle, but it's going to be quite a clear day. Possibilities of high humidity expected there. The rest of the Sahara Desert going to be hot and dry, with a bit of rain only expected towards the northernmost part of Africa. And this will continue for the weekend, as well as we see low pressure cell going in up until the northern part of Algeria. Temperatures there quite hot for the Al-Jouf regions at 31 degrees. Remember, it is winter along those parts, and most of the temperatures into the upper teens, indicating cool weather that is expected along the central parts of the Middle East. Baghdad at just around 9 degrees and Mecca at 33. That's why I leave it for the weather. Do stay tuned. There'll be more later.
There must be something. There has to be a place where young entrepreneurs can come, and get advice and interact with people that are knowledgeable.
Business for me, really, it's a calling. I do believe that it is a calling. Because I even remember, even when I was younger, when I was in grade 4, I sold silkworms. And they were quite popular, actually.
I was making a New York brand in South Africa. Being very proud of being a South African, I wanted to make it proudly South African.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Welcome back. It's 2 minutes after 10 o'clock. Yes, we're a little bit behind schedule, but it's a busy news day, and we've got a lot going on today. Of course, we focus on the inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who wants to pull America out of free trade deals, reduce environmental protection, scrap Obamacare, and build a wall between America and Mexico, as well as establishing a cyber defense team. It's a tough question, but the people are responding to it, aren't they?
100%. This is actually going to be headlining for the entire day. And the question really is, can U.S. President-elect Donald Trump make America great again? And we've got quite a few votes in already. I'll tell you what, of the votes that we've got, of the 205 votes that we've got, 26% say yes, he can make America great again, whereas we've got 74% that say no, not a chance.
Yeah, you guys are tweeting us also plenty. So let's have a look at some of the latest tweets that have just come in with regards to the world's top story today, which is the inauguration of Donald Trump. Sipo says, Trump is a nightmare. He's so a bully. This is a World War III. He's so rude. I don't think he's Christian for that matter, says Sipo.
Christian Kleinhans reckons it was not Trump as much that won, but democracy. They could elect exactly who they want, and that's the beauty of it. Viva!
One for democracy. Michael Jambase Kave says, I don't think Trump will make America great again. Simple and to the point.
And to the point. Natim Guni says, maybe he will.
Yeah, maybe.
Sitting on the fence.
Maybe he will. Let's hope he don't make America great again at the expense of everyone else. Anyhow, yeah, back home in South Africa, of course, the key focus and the question of the day that we're asking you, we're focusing on Acting Police Commissioner General Khomotso Patlane, who's now threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. IPID is investigating allegations that General Patlane bought his luxurious house and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activities, they say. Well, the General is in our Pretoria studios. We'll be with him in less than a minute, but that's the question. If you have a question to the General himself, tweet it to us and we'll ask the General that question. But for now, let's take a look at the top stories. Acting National Police Commissioner Khomotso Patlane is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home yesterday. The West African military force intervening in the Gambian presidential crisis says it's halted its advance into the country. ECOWAS's regional group says President Yahya Jammeh has until midday today, local time, to step down. And the stage is set for Donald Trump to ascend to the highest office in the United States, capping his improbable journey to the White House and beginning a 4-year term that promises to shake up Washington and the world. Well, that's your top stories right now, but let's go over to Kendall to see what's happening in the world of sport.
Thank you very much, Evan. It's a rip-roaring start to the year. We're looking forward to a massive weekend of sports. Good morning to you. This is what's up in the sports today.
It's on target. It's a cracker. And it's 2. And it's Henri Saivet.
The Warriors of Zimbabwe are teetering on the edge of elimination from AFCON 2017 after a 2-0 beating by the group-topping Lions of Teranga.
I don't think there's ever a recipe to, for your first game to ever calm those nerves, and you probably won't sleep the night before, but hopefully they can get over that and pull out a good game.
A new-look Protea side takes to the field against a battered and bruised Sri Lanka in the first of 3 T20s this evening.
We are proud as the first Chinese company that have a 3-term, 12 years commitment, and we were making sure this thing work.
Chinese billionaire Jack Ma's e-commerce company Alibaba signs a major sponsorship deal with the Olympics. And of course, at 10:40, I'll be bringing you all the detail to these and other stories. But for now, it is back to Evan, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Very good morning to us now for the top story in South Africa right now. Acting National Police Commissioner General Khomotso Patlane is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home yesterday. The IPID pounced on General Patlane's property in an upmarket estate north of Pretoria late yesterday afternoon. The IPID is looking into allegations that General Patlane bought his luxurious house and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activities. His house is rumoured to be worth around 8 million rand, which would suggest a mortgage loan way above his earning potential. Patlane has denied all allegations against him. The acting police head was served with a search warrant which mentioned a sound system purchased for more than 80,000 rand, for which he provided proof of payment from his bank account to IPID. General Patlane is accusing the police watchdog of humiliating him and tipping off the media about this raid. Now, in a coup for Newsroom and in an exclusive interview, General Patlane joins us now from our Pretoria studios to give us his views on what's transpired in the last 24 hours. Very good morning to you, General. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
General, do you think there's a witch hunt against you?
Well, I'm on record as having said that I am going to respect the authorities competent to conduct investigations and enable the processing of any such matters through the courts of our country. As to the witch hunt, I will leave it to the processes that are to decide upon that. But where I am of the view that I am treated unfairly, unethically, and there is a concerted effort, a program that is aimed at attacking my integrity and ensuring that I am losing the focus on the work that I'm supposed to be doing as an ordinary South African.
Is there any evidence, or has any evidence been presented to you of any wrongdoing on your part?
It is allegation. Vague as they are, they remain allegations. And yesterday I have hosted officials from IPIT in my office who presented two charges. So one, defeating the ends of justice, and secondly, corruption. The so-called corruption flows from the purchase of what is now commonly known as the music system or sound system in my house. The allegation there is that there is a service provider to the police that purchased it for me, and there is nothing at all to support that allegation, as I am clear that I have contracted this particular person, yes, who happened to be a service provider to the South African Police Service, but I have contracted her as an interior designer, which work she is doing, and it's a business relationship. She is to offer services. I am to pay for those services. She obtained the quotation from SoundsGrade in Woodlands, provided me with that quotation, following which I approached my bank to process an EFT directly to SoundsGrade in Woodlands. So if that is corruption, I don't know when did we introduce a new definition of corruption.
Who do you then think are these people making the allegations through IPID against you? Do you suspect political interference?
No, I'm not going to suggest political interference, and I don't have to repeat with who they are. They are very well known. You have got a certain gentleman commonly known as Paul O'Sullivan. You also have a colonel who happens to be working for us in the Eastern Cape, a Colonel Monsami. There are a number of them that I know are involved, and you now know that these are allegations made by the head of IPIT and his people, despite the fact that they were given proof that this music system or sound system has been paid by me. They made it a point of parading the media before my house while I was still busy with the interview. It was breaking news. Famously, Karen Vaughan, Angelique, who always will be running such stories for these people, were on site, having more than 20 media people there while I'm still busy with an interview, and the allegation was the house is being raided. So I was surprised because the people who were to be doing the so-called raid were still with me in the office.
Do you view these, this alleged trial by media and these tip-offs to the media, do you view this as unethical behavior?
I have been subjected to this kind of conduct since 2009, where every time I am made to answer questions by the media, by people who are well known what their agenda is, and I have continuously cooperated with all. There was an investigation, for example, emanating from the allegations in 2010, which allegations are not different from the allegations that are being investigated by IPIT. We have communicated the outcome of that report, which after it was concluded, it took the authorities more than a year to make it visible to me, and it was never communicated in public. I took the liberty of communicating it because I continue to be fielding questions on the so-called leakages of that particular report.
General Patlani, of course, at the center of this entire controversy is this 8 million rand home that you have or that you inhabit in the estate north of Pretoria. Can you clarify this, or do you feel a need to clarify the affordability factor of this house?
I am a public servant, and at the level where I am, ordinarily we are to be subjected to scrutiny, lifestyle audits. If at an opportune moment I am to do that, which I've already done, by the way, in securing my top secret clearance, I had to be scrutinized. And when that time comes, I'll subject myself to such. But the current developments and the continuous trial through the media cannot be tolerated. I think it is uncalled for. It is trying to distract me from the work that we are supposed to be doing. There you go, a raid. Do you know a raid? It's a very militaristic way to refer to a search.
Yeah.
People went to my house. I had allowed them to go there so that they can go and satisfy themselves that those items that are on the list that was attached to the search warrant are there in the house. They took pictures of such and they came out without taking anything. But there is this sensation of a raid at the acting National Police Commissioner's house, which is unfortunate.
General, some IPID investigators have put forward that they've been receiving death threats because of this investigation into you. Do you have a response to that?
I ordinarily will not dignify it with a response. I think they think too much of themselves. And if there is any such, they are more than welcome to follow processes that are well known in ensuring that there is an investigation, and let them come to the bottom of that particular matter. But what they should know is that this continuation of an attack, an assault on my integrity, is never going to be taken lightly. And I will want them, together with Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, also equally to cooperate with the authorities when they get closer to them for all these things, including the violation of my privacy. I can place it on record that O'Sullivan, when he was with the IPID investigators at my place, he went to the extent of asking very serious security issues around me. He wanted to know, how many protectors do I have? Do they stay inside the house with me or not? What times am I coming in and out? What vehicles are we using? What has all this to do with the so-called 8 million, if it is not a security risk? And he went on to talk about 8 million house. I am challenging him and anyone who believes that story to put before me any transaction that will suggest that this house was built for 8 million. I have got a bond for 3 million, and that is what I've built my house for. Less than that because of what we were able to do in that place.
General, before we wrap up, of course, you know we live in the time of social media and everyone has a voice in the world. Now, our viewers are sending in some questions. Are you prepared to take some questions from South Africans on the street?
All in order.
Thank you very much. This one comes from Gozimes. Says, please ask the General Patlani how many sources of income does he have and whether he can show us his hands like Celebi, that his hands are clean. Just a bit, how many income streams do you have, General?
I'm a public servant. I get a salary. I've been in this organization for over 31 years. I am not earning stones, and I am not going to take up whatever this person is trying to make me to do.
One more question from Lawrence Bailey. Can we have Lawrence Bailey's question there? There we have it. He says, are you confident that this matter will dissolve soon, as well as that you will come out on top?
Resolve, I don't know. What else must I do if I'm being accused to have received a gift of a music system and I am providing you with proof that this was a system that was purchased by me, and you tend to ignore that, you go on a media frenzy. So that question is directed at the wrong person.
General, I thank you for coming, for being so frank and coming to talk to us today about this story. Of course, it's all over the media in South Africa today. Thank you once again for coming on to the Newsroom show.
Thank you very much. We will continue to do our work. We are not about to be shaken.
Thank you very much. That is Lieutenant General Khomotso Phahlane. He is the acting police commissioner here in South Africa. He stands accused of corruption, although we have to add very little evidence, real tangible evidence to this effect have been put forward by these accusers. Now we move on. The West African military force intervening in the Gambia's presidential crisis says it has halted its advance into the country. The ECOWAS regional group says Yahya Jammeh has until midday today, local time, to stop claiming to be the president of the country. Jammeh has refused to leave office despite losing an election to Adama Barrow, who's been sworn in as president of Gambia in an embassy in Senegal yesterday.
Gambian, I hereby make a special appeal to ECOWAS, AU and UN, particularly the Security Council, to support the government and people of the Gambia in enforcing their will, restore their sovereignty and constitutional legitimacy. I therefore call on all civilians and military personnel of the state to support my presidency, since it is built on a constitutional foundation. They are assured that they will not be subjected to any injustice and discrimination, but would be provided with better working conditions and terms of service.
The latest now, Senegalese troops have entered the Gambia in support of Adama Barrow, who was sworn in as president on Thursday after winning last month's election. Now, Barrow took the oath of office at the Gambian embassy in another country, in Senegal's capital, Dakar, and his legitimacy has been recognized internationally. The West African regional bloc, ECOWAS, has now given Yahya Jammeh until noon on Friday to leave the office. That's today. For the latest developments on Gambia, in our studio we are joined by Kumi Naidu, the Director for Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Very good morning.
Now, Kumi, you just arrived back from the Gambia. What was your visit all about in the Gambia?
Well, it was really to try and prevent a military intervention and to try to work with civil society on the ground in their efforts to convince President Jammeh to leave, to step down peacefully. And we also met with the coalition that won the elections. It's important, for people to know that the question of the mandate is clear. 61% of the people did not vote for him, right? When you take the third-party candidate's vote. Secondly, the emergency that he declared is actually null and void because it didn't follow procedure, it wasn't gazetted and so on. From having spent 3 days on the ground, I can tell you that there's no question that the people of Gambia want change. They are concerned about what's happening. As you know, already now there's about close to 60,000 people that have left Gambia for other countries, and a larger number still that have left the capital city, Banjul, for rural areas because they figure that's where fighting will happen if it does happen.
As we speak, what is the situation like on the ground?
So right now, I've been speaking to people we met with, colleagues we work with. It's eerily quiet at the moment. That's the term that people are using. President Jammeh is supposedly holed up in his palace with only his private security service. I mean, the presidential guard.
Yes.
The 1,000-person army, it's only a 1,000-person army, because this is a population of less than 2 million, right? And the chief of the army came out yesterday and said, we will not oppose ECOWAS. He said, I'm not stupid, basically meaning that when you got Nigeria, Senegal and Togo coming in with 2,000 troops, plus they got air power, which Gambia doesn't have.
Yeah.
So I think the president is highly isolated, and it really is beyond belief that he has not taken the option that he's had. His wife.
What were the options, though?
Well, one option was to go to Nigeria. The other was Morocco, because Morocco, his wife actually is half Moroccan, and Mauritania also was offering him. But for the record, President-elect Barrow said to him, we are not going to act with vengeance. You're welcome to stay in the country, and you'll have all the presidential sort of rights and so on. But I think he panicked, having first agreed, accepted the result, called Barrow, congratulated him. He panicked because he knows, and many people know, he's got a very bad track record of detentions without trial, murder, torture, disappearance.
So a lot of human rights abuses.
And also just the capture of the state. I mean, the people that have benefited, almost every business enterprise, even construction, either his family or friends are actually, benefiting. And so I think he was fearful of ending up in the ICC. And as such, that's the only reason you can give, other than, as many people in Gambia say, that he does have a brain tumor. And he did go for treatment last year, and maybe that's the thing. Because you cannot, it's just totally nonsensical approach. However, don't be surprised that he has fooled everybody into thinking that he's still in Gambia and he's left. I wouldn't be surprised. He's a kind of wild card.
Let's talk about President Adama Barrow, who was sworn in as the president in Senegal. What does this now mean for him, being sworn in a different country, and of course not being in his country, as almost like an exiled president?
Yes, I mean, constitutionally and legally, he needs to be sworn in on Gambian territory. And technically, an embassy is Gambian territory. So constitutionally, it was done by the book. Obviously, it was not the desired outcome. But why that needed to happen was that ECOWAS did not want to go in without two things, without being invited by a president that had been duly sworn in, but also they did not want to go in without a United Nations Security Council resolution, which they got late yesterday afternoon. So that's why now troops are on the ground in Gambia, but they're keeping a low profile. The Gambian army are all in the barracks, but don't forget that President Jammeh arrested quite a few military officers already in the weeks leading up to it. And so right now, I think the talk was that once things fall apart, there's not going to be a military resistance, we expect, right?
Because there's only 1,000 men.
And even a smaller number that's actually supporting him in the presidential palace, assuming that he's still there. And then once that happens, then President of Senegal will go in with the president and they'll have a proper inauguration.
Just elaborate on the UN security resolution and what does that mean for Gambia?
So it accepted, firstly, that President Barrow was duly elected, and it also, an invasion of a country's border, while ECOWAS had, pretty much room to maneuver, it's, in terms of international law, it's better secured in terms of legality if the UN Security Council gives it a mandate, and they've done that. But people must remember now that the consequences, even if within the next 24 hours everything is resolved, he either gets arrested or by the deadline he leaves to one of those countries or another country, there are 60,000 people we spoke to people who emptied the bank accounts, right, so that the children and families could leave the country. So getting them back is going to be costly, difficult, and so on. So there's going to be a whole process of actually getting people to return home.
Now, speaking about that deadline we reported as 12 o'clock, but that has been moved.
Well, what I've just heard from people on the ground is that there's a chance that it'll be pushed for another 12 hours to give an unnamed president who has access to him a further chance to convince him to leave. Now, the Mauritanian president, who is a long-time friend and ally of him, was the one who actually went before the first deadline, passed, and he failed to convince him. But this is an unconfirmed report, so I guess Gambia is 2 hours behind South African time. So we will know in sort of 4 hours whether, if he doesn't leave, whether in fact there's a military intervention or whether in fact there is another process. Because I can tell you, ECOWAS and the president-elect don't want a single bullet to be fired, because we worked hard to also lobby to say, listen, whenever we go to war, we are all losers.
Yes.
Right? And so long as he's not firing at people at the moment, continue to talk. But I have to say that right now, people's patience is at thin. The last sort of WhatsApp messages coming to me out of Gambia are suggesting that people saying, okay, enough, ECOWAS must just go and take him. Yeah.
Mr. Naidu, thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much for having us.
That was Kumi Naidu. He's the Director for Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity. Let's now move on to other stories. Political scientists are in agreement that supporters of the outgoing United States President Barack Hussein Obama will miss most when he leaves office is the dignity, the class and the intellectualism that he and his family brought to the White House. The historic first black presidency of the country officially ends when New Yorker Donald Trump is sworn into office today, ending 8 years marked by the rescuing of a troubled economy, passing landmark yet controversial healthcare legislation, and better relations with Cuba in what analysts call an imperfect foreign policy under his watch. Our correspondent, Shawn Bryce Peace, looks back at the legacy of America's first black president.
Hello, Chicago.
It was an unseasonably warm November night in his adoptive hometown of Chicago when, at just 47 years old, Barack Obama would ascend to the highest office in the land, a message of hope and change that would alter the course of history.
It's truly changed the United States, and on another level, what does that change mean? I think it's important and safe to say that on a very important level, which may be hard to judge for quite some time, there's been a decade of young Americans who have grown up with the natural notion of an African-American president.
Sherwin. Mr. President. How are you, sir?
We sat down to talk terrorism in Africa with President Obama at the White House in 2010, mere months before Democrats would lose control of the House of Representatives, an event that would significantly slow the agenda of this president, whether on immigration reform, Supreme Court nominees, or support for his calls to lift the embargo on Cuba.
Certainly, maybe not the first president, but certainly the first modern president whose citizenship was challenged. There was a general disrespect. Now, this, I think, is safe to say, is not new in the sense that it really began around Clinton. And there's an aspect to this also of an attack on the 60s generation.
Race. A large part of it is the fact that so many members of Congress and their constituencies could never wrap their minds around the fact that our 44th president is half Kenyan and is the leader of the free world.
Dr. Greer is also the author of Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream, issues that remain front and center in the American body politic.
Many of his policies aimed at a social welfare state that would lift all boats. And because there's systemic and institutional racism that has carried on in this country, and we have a disproportionate number of African Americans who tend to be on the lower end of the spectrum, as well as Latinos and people of color, I think a lot of Obama's policies are, because he knew he could never get a race-based policy through, it's a class-based policy to really think about the collective. And so that will ultimately help many African-American families.
Despite his great oratory skills, he has conceded to losing the PR battle on his policy choices, failing to close Guantanamo Bay, to holistically end the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, while Syria's implosion happened on his watch.
We had entered a new phase in a number of other ways. The one that's been commented on, of course, a lot is the media, which I'm sure you've been affected by, in the very sense that more than ever, certainly in the last decade, many Americans only receive their news through channels that already reflect what they believe. So there's much less of an awareness, let alone an acceptance of opposition ideas.
Because of that, there wasn't a sustained sort of, let me sit America down. Let me make sure that all of my surrogates from across the country, that's governors, that's senators, that's members of Congress, that's people in state houses, that's mayors, let's make sure all of them have the talking points and the clarification of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, so that all voters understand the real importance of this moment in time. That never happened.
But where there is no argument is how the first family handled themselves over the last 8 years.
Dignity. This is the picture of a man who will be in your children's schools. You know, this is a man who literally, you know, the way the framers set it up, not as a king, but as the moral compass of this country. And we've seen Barack Obama, 0 scandals. No women, no money nonsense, nothing. This is just pure, he came and he did the work.
Supporters have been known to chant 4 more years. They want him to stay in office. Of course, that isn't possible. What is it about him that they will miss the most?
Literate, intelligent, articulate, well-read, thoughtful, maybe to a fault, president that we've had in a long time. That's number one. Number two, of course, is an African-American family in the White House. And not only an African-American family, but the perfect family. And an administration with no scandal, you know, whatsoever. I mean, as much as people tried to find scandals, there really was no major scandal in this administration.
And back in Chicago, a final word to his supporters.
I'm asking you to believe, not in my ability to bring about change, but in yours.
A legacy threatened by his successor, but as yet undetermined, with time likely to have the final word, as it does with everything else. Shervin Briceby's SABC News, Washington.
Now, in his farewell speech, come lecture a little bit earlier this month, Barack Obama proclaimed that he made America better by almost every measure. The statement goes far beyond optimism and lands squarely in the realm of what some observers may call delusion. 8 years of Obama's leadership has left America arguably demonstrably weaker and more divided. Now, for more on the Obama legacy, we are joined in studio by Dr. David Monye, who is the director of the Confucius Institute. Very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you for being with us.
Most welcome.
A very likable man, Barack Obama. Universally liked, one would think. But what kind of legacy will he be remembered for?
I think this is a man that came into power in 2008 after yet another disaster in the U.S. History in terms of the previous administration of George W. Bush. And he was able to turn around the country as far as the economy, in terms of character and lack of scandals. So he is a feel-good president. However, this is also the president that he has dropped more bombs in the world than any other president. He didn't do it in the manner in which George W. Bush did, quietly using drones. And I think for us as South Africans and Africans, this is also a man that did not do much for the continent.
Before we get to the continent, I want to talk about the bombs a bit quickly, because people don't realize that during his 8 years in office, he dropped a bomb on what we would call a poor nation every 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes of his 8 years, there was a bomb dropped, which is almost double the amount of George W. Bush, who will go down as one of the most hated presidents of all time.
changing nature of the U.S. and U.S. role in the world, I think he confronted more problems as far as war on terror is concerned, and he pursued it in a much more nuanced way. However, I think what was much of a problem is the recklessness in how it was pursued, where bombs were bombed, communities were bombed in Pakistan, in other areas where it affected innocent people. And therefore, I think we are measuring this man against the Nobel Peace Prize that he won. So the bigger question that we are asking, did he deserve it? The simple answer that I have is that it's no, even though we know history will judge him differently.
Is it because he was such a great orator, such a great speaker, that there's this illusion that he was also a great president?
He's a great personality, and he's also quite good when it comes to the speaking. And if you read his books, he has a fantastic history and the ability to turn one's own life. And when it comes to question of race and coherent in terms of dealing with issues of LGBT, dealing with issues of gender, I think he has done extremely well. The U.S. is in a better situation, even though the other contradiction is that the African Americans are much in worse situation than in the year 2008, given the fact that the Black Lives Matter and the killing of African Americans on the streets of America.
Soft issues, that's what he excelled at, isn't it, in the end? But Africa, let's talk about Africa, because there's a sense here in Africa that he didn't do much for us. He came here, big hullabaloo, and talked the talk, but the walk was never really walked with Africa, was it?
Indeed. I think the greatest failure was in Libya in 2011. He assisted France and Britain in bombing as well as murdering Muammar Gaddafi. I think that he has accepted that was one of his greatest failures. But when it comes to trade, I think there was much talk. As a matter of fact, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush did better for Africa than Barack Obama, a man with ancestral background in Kenya, and he has a strong African affinity. This is a man that came into politics in the anti-apartheid struggle in Chicago, and that was disappointing.
Is a US president really as powerful as we think he is, or is he merely a spokesperson for, call it capital, for lack of a better word?
Very powerful in terms of what he says, what he does. His ability to turn and influence others, the ability to influence direction, as much as he did extremely well on climate change, an issue that affects the continent. I think when it comes to the Paris Agreement on climate change, he did extremely well. His ability to work with China, an emerging power, his ability to work with other countries, even though there are a lot of disagreements. So when it comes to climate change, Cuba, Iran, I think President Obama is an excellent president.
Do you think he will attend Donald Trump's inauguration later today?
In the U.S. history, he has to hand over, and it's a must for him to be there. Officially, he has to be there to hand over power and to be seen to be out of White House and occupy yet another role in the U.S. as well as the world as a former president.
Now, we're looking forward to Donald Trump. I don't know if we are looking forward or if the world is looking forward. Is this going to be the train wreck of a presidency that we all expecting?
It's going to be a terrible era. However, it's hard to predict. He might achieve some of the things that he promised to do in terms of building a wall. It's a low-hanging fruit. It's easy to build a wall. I think he might manage to bring in few jobs in the United States, but in the long term, there might be some serious problems. I think what frightens us most, it's not Donald Trump. It's the failure of the establishment, the elites all over the world, to read what's happening at the moment in the world. The situation is much more terrifying than what we're being told. We're unable to predict what happened in Britain with Brexit. even in the US and at Davos, elites gathered, and up to now, you really don't get a sense of serious analysis and solution for the problems that we're confronting in the world.
Doctor, we've run out of time. I thank you for joining us. It's a little bit scary what you're telling us, what we're looking forward to, but there's no doubt that there's a right-wing element that's rising all around the world, and all of that is on the back of things like immigration and a poor economic outlook. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today.
You're most welcome.
It was great to talk to you. That's Dr. David Monye, who is the director of the Confucius Institute, joining us, talking about, of course, the legacy of Barack Hussein Obama. Now, we're conducting a poll and we're asking you, can President-elect Donald Trump, can he make America great again? We've got 219 votes in right now. 26% of you say, yes, he can. 74%, 3/4 are saying, no way. Trump will not make America great again. Many people doubt whether his legacy will be the ultimate division of the free world. That's where we have it. Do we have some comments there? There we do. Tebatso. Tebatso says, Newsroom, time will tell, but like his predecessor, he may realize how limited his authority is within a month and crumble under. Gay Batman says, if you mean by great that he will bully the minority communities, lie to the public and employ the least qualified cabinet. Zbuzwane comes and says, Trump, he's not showing respect to the black Americans, as he said he's going to send all blacks back to Africa. Spokes comes and he says, never. America will drift back to the Stone Age, I think, is what it is. Yep, they say the Third World War will be fought with nuclear weapons. The Fourth World War will be fought with sticks and stones. We'll be fine. We hope that this doesn't happen. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk to Human Rights Watch about their annual report and looking into the Donald Trump factor. Don't go away.
There must be something. There has to be a place where young entrepreneurs can come, and get advice and interact with people that are knowledgeable.
Business for me, really, it's a calling. I do believe that it is a calling. Because I even remember, even when I was younger, when I was in grade 4, I sold silkworms. And they were quite popular, actually.
I was making a New York brand in South Africa. Being very proud of being a South African, I wanted to make it proudly South African.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsroom. Now, Human Rights Watch has released its annual report on threats to human rights around the world. According to Human Rights Watch, President-elect Donald Trump's victory, as well as the emergence of far-right populist parties in Europe, have put post-war human rights systems at risk. The report summarizes human rights issues in more than 90 countries from late 2015 till November 2016 last year. The president-elect is listed alongside notorious political strongmen, including Syria's Bashar al-Assad, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the Philippines' Rodrigo Duterte. Now, for more on this report, we are joined live via Skype by Human Rights Media Director Andrew Stroline, all the way from Brussels this morning. Morning to you, Andrew. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Andrew, just give us a quick overview of the report.
Well, it's our annual report, and every year we look at 90 to 100 different countries around the world, and we try to highlight the human rights abuses in those individual countries, and also look at trends around the world where human rights and the situation for human rights is going globally. And this year we are highlighting the dangerous threat that the rise of xenophobic populism represents, in the form of Donald Trump, of course, but also in the form of others, particularly here in Europe, where I sit, people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, Vladimir Putin, and Tayyip Erdogan, of course, in Turkey. And we're also looking at threats this year in elections from people like Marine Le Pen and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. Not to mention the Brexit catastrophe, which has a real xenophobic edge to it, and always has.
Now, the report says that Donald Trump's campaign flirted proposals that could harm millions of people. What do you think? What are some of these proposals that stand out for you?
Well, some of his promises during the campaign were incredibly disturbing. Where do we even start? Let's start with torture. He promised to bring back torture. This is not only immoral, it is illegal under U.S. law, it is illegal in international law, and of course it just doesn't work. People will say anything to stop the torture, so it doesn't exactly work like it does in the movies, where you have a ticking time bomb and you torture the guy and free the princess. This is just crazy talk, and it's incredibly dangerous. And look, it's not just dangerous for the United States, it's dangerous for the world. Not only how U.S. foreign policy acts, but how other leaders take that as a cue. And we've already seen that in various cases where other leaders around the world are saying, well, it's the Trump era now, so anything goes.
The rise of the right is what they're calling it, Brexit, the voting in of Trump and so forth. How do you at Human Rights Watch view this threat, if one can call it that?
Well, it's an extremely serious threat. And I think the best way to put it is you have these people who consider themselves strong men, and you have a population that's worried about very serious issues. They're worried about economic issues. They're worried about security issues. They're worried about kind of cultural issues that are slightly more difficult to define. And people come along, politicians come along, and they try to take advantage of those fears. They try to play up those fears, and they try to play up those hatreds. It's fear-mongering, it's hate-mongering, and these strong men try to say, well, look, I can protect you. I will protect the people. I speak for the people. I speak for the majority. I speak for the nation, and I will save you. It is something that, frankly, we have seen before here in Europe, and it has had disastrous results.
Now, 2017, Andrew, is going to be a big election year in Europe specifically, where you are based. We see a lot of right-wing rhetoric on the rise in Europe, especially on the back of Brexit. Is this going to be a landmark year, and how do you view that?
Well, I think it's an absolutely critical year that we're looking forward to. So in March, we have the Netherlands heading into elections. Then in April, May, we have the presidential elections in France, followed by the legislative elections in France. Later in the year, we'll have elections in Germany. We may see elections in Italy, the Czech Republic, and other places as well. I think all of these elections are going to be really quite critical. I mean, particularly France and the Netherlands coming up here in the next few months. That's really going to show us where Europe is headed. Is it going to head down the kind of Trumpist road of strong men and strong women, in the case of Marine Le Pen, and steamroller the rights of individuals in the name of the majority, the nation, the people? Or are we going to see a reaction against Trumpism and Putinism and have Europe stand up for the values that we hold universally, really?
Andrew, thank you. I hope that you are right. We are very nervous about what's happening in especially Europe and in America, in South Africa, and I think the world is. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
That was Human Rights Watch Media Director Andrew Stroline joining us live from Brussels to give Human Rights Watch view on, well, Trump's election and also what is happening in Europe right now. Time now for us to go over to Kendall Mahamate for a quick sports update.
Ewan, thank you very much. A very interesting and newsworthy day we've had today, back-to-back, wall-to-wall. Talking of which, dominant Senegal has become the first team to advance to the quarterfinals of the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations in Gabon. The continent's #1 ranked team beat Zimbabwe 2-0 last night to sail into the next round with a game to spare. Now, really, it was the Teranga Lions who continued from where they left off on Sunday after beating Tunisia with the same goal margin. They never rested on their laurels as they pushed forward in search of their opening goal from the word go. Senegal wrapped up the match within the first 15 minutes as Liverpool's Sadio Mane opened their account in the 9th minute after connecting with Keita Balde's cross. 3 minutes later, the West Africans won a set piece, but the first goal first.
It's an early breakthrough.
Now, 3 minutes later, the Teranga Lions won a set piece after Bidvest fullback Onismor Basera, his foul on Balde.
It's on target. It's a cracker.
And it was curtains for Zimbabwe as Henri Savet beat Marshal Mkuruva hands down from the resulting free kick. Mkuruva's point-blank saves late in the match kept the score at a respectable 2-0. Zimbabwe must beat Tunisia in the last Group B match to have any chance of qualifying for the quarterfinals and hope that Senegal do not lose against Algeria.
Headed off the line almost by Costa Namo and Nesu.
Now, Tunisia are in contention to gain a quarterfinal berth if they beat bitter North African rivals Algeria 2-1 in the earlier Group B encounter. 2 defensive mistakes by Algeria helped see Tunisia to victory.
Chances there! Oh, just off the line by the keeper.
Captain Aissa Mandi, who scored an own goal, then Napoli defender Fouazi Goulam gave away a penalty that was converted by Naim Sliti in a horror second half for Algeria, as Tunisia rebounded from their defeat at the hands of Senegal on Sunday.
Penalty! Astella, can he be a hero? Sliti!
Now, Sofiane Hani pulled a goal back a minute into stoppage time for the Carthage Eagles, well, for Algeria rather, but it came too late for them to mount a comeback.
Surely this time.
Now, Keegan Dolly, Mamelodi Sundowns transfer saga still is inconclusive as it was at the beginning of the week. Now, the week has now come to an end, and all that we can say for sure is that it will carry on into next week. Last night, for example, SABC News senior reporter William Buri spoke to SABC. Here it is.
Keegan Dolly, he trained with Sundowns yesterday, and he went again this morning. Even though he didn't train in the game, he said his goodbyes. He was given his passport by the club, and also his locker as well. He cleared his locker as well. So all indications are that the boy is heading to France, where he will link up with Montpellier. Obviously, when the two clubs have finalized the issue of the transfer fee, the next point becomes the issue of the personal terms.
Of South Africa's celebrities were battling it out for 40 grand at the 5th annual Celebrity Cookoff in Witbank.
We look forward to welcoming everybody to Emlahleni because this is the place of coal.
For a starter, I'll give you guys 45 minutes to prepare, and the main course will be 1 hour 30 minutes.
The team name is Iliqua Stars, the clever choices. Yes! Manora, a pizza.
3 Michelin stars.
Yes!
Like a niece, 2. Drum roll!
Swami and the defending champions are the Michelin Stars!
That's Trends Travel every Sunday, 12 to 1 p.m. on SABC News.
Police found powerful military explosives when they swooped on a house in Springs on the Gauteng.
Some of the weapons seized at this house included rocket-propelled grenades, rifles, and even rounds of ammunition.
All military explosives that we found that you cannot obtain a commission.
The weapons found at the house not only had the potential to cause major damage to property, but they also put many lives at risk.
I could have lost any one of my family members, or most of my family members.
Yes, as you know, it's the final hour. It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Friday, the 20th of January already. The month is almost gone, Kendall.
Yeah, no, it started so fast. It's going, before you know it,
it'll be Christmas again. Jumbo Africa. I'm Elvis Preston.
I'm Kendall Makamate.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, this morning we focus on an issue that the whole world is waiting for, and that's the inauguration of the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who wants to pull America out of free trade deals, reduce environmental protections, scrap Obamacare, build a wall between the U.S. and Mexico, and establish a cyber defense team. So we're asking you a question, Ken.
Exactly, and that's our poll question for the day. We're asking you, can the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump make America great again?
Yes, that's our question that we have for you. But we're also following up with that's on the poll, rather. And what does the poll say, by the way? Do we have a poll up? In fact, no, there's only some comments here. This one, Kendall, from Adam?
It's from Adam Ray, who reckons, like him or not, Trump is now the commander-in-chief. U.S. populace needs to get on board and support him, else they will sink their own country.
That one from Adam there. This one from Tsepo says, those who voted for him will regret Trump. He will destroy the U.S., says Tsepo. Well, that's strong words there.
And see, Paul jumps in with Trump is a nightmare. He is a bully. This is a World War III. He's so rude. I don't think he's Christian, for that matter.
Oh, well, I tell you what. People have got their own thoughts on the Donald. Well, you can keep them coming on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, and you can also participate in that poll. We'll take a look at that poll just now. There we go. That's a poll up. Will Trump make America great again? So far,
we've got a few more votes than we had a little earlier. We had 222 votes now, and very interesting, Elvis, that the overwhelming majority do not believe that Trump will make America great again. That's 75%.
75%, 25% are saying yes. So keep them coming, and we'll read them as we continue. But focus here at home. The acting National Police Commissioner, Komotso Paslani, now he is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. As you know, IPID is investigating allegations that Paslani bought this luxurious house and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activities. We had him on the show earlier, exclusive, live, only here on the Newsroom. So we're asking that question, Kendall.
Now, what do you make of that IPID raid on the home of the acting National Police Commissioner, Komotso Paslani?
He also disputed the raid. He said it's not a raid, it's a search. So people are creating this hype
news
around
out of
the search. So there we go. Let's take a look at what you have to say. This one from Muli says Paslani is living this lavish life while most police constables can hardly afford an RDP house with their paltry salaries. Well, he's not a constable, Muli. You heard him. He says he doesn't earn rocks or stones.
And one Dilingnever says it was unethical behavior on the side of IPID.
That's one dealer. Tabatso says, Ethics 1, conflict of interest. You do not do personal business with corporate service providers. Well, we don't know that yet. The truth is, something is amiss, so says Tabatso. The investigation will reveal that.
Exactly, and very happy to be getting all of your thoughts on this very important matter. Of course, like Elvis just said, the investigation will reveal all.
That's what we got to leave it for now. Let's take a look at your news headlines. The acting National Police Commissioner Komotso Paslani is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. The West African military force intervening in the Gambia's presidential crisis says it has halted its advance into the country. ECOWAS regional group says that President Yahya Jammeh has been given until midday local time. Now, you heard from Kumi Naidu that timeline has been moved until midnight tonight. So we'll keep you posted on that story. And the stage is set for Donald Trump to ascend to the highest office in the United States, capping his improbable journey to the White House and beginning a 4-year term that promises to shake up Washington and the world. Those are your headlines. So before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. It's an issue of Keegan Easy Dolly.
Touche. You know what? Up till now, nobody's quite sure exactly what's happened with Keegan Dolly. We will try once again to get hold of the club to see what they take on it. But we have heard the latest coming out of it is that they're still waiting for the real buyout clause. So leave it up. I'll leave it there for now. We'll definitely be giving you more on that a little later. What we do have and what we are sure of is that calculators are necessary now for our COSAFA members, Zimbabwe. But I get ahead of myself. Good morning to you. This is what's up in the sports today.
It's on target. It's a cracker. And it's 2. And it's Henri Saivet.
The Warriors of Zimbabwe are teetering on the edge of elimination from AFCON 2017 after a 2-0 beating by the group-topping Lions of Teranga.
I don't think there's even a recipe to, you know, for your first game to ever calm those nerves, and you probably won't sleep the night before, but hopefully they can get over that and pull out a good game.
And a new look Proteas side takes to the field against a battered and bruised Sri Lanka in the first of 3 T20s this evening.
We're proud as the first Chinese company that have a 3-term, 12 years commitment. And we were making sure this thing work.
Chinese billionaire Jack Ma's e-commerce company Alibaba signs a major sponsorship deal with the Olympics. I'll have all of this detail for you, as well as a preview of the T20 series that Sports Live had with Lunga later on in the bulletin at about 11:35. Be sure to stick around, but for now, make sure you stay with Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The acting National Police Commissioner Komotso Pahlani is threatening to sue the Independent Police Investigative Directorate for raiding his home. IPID pounced on Pahlani's property in an upmarket estate north of Pretoria yesterday afternoon. IPID says they are looking into allegations that Pahlani bought his luxurious home and other expensive items with money obtained from corrupt activities. His house is rumored to be worth around 8 million rand, which would suggest a mortgage loan way above his earning potential. Pahlani has denied all allegations against him. The acting police head was served with a search warrant, which mentioned a sound system purchased for more than 80,000 rand, for which he provided proof of payment from his private bank account to IPID. Pahlani is accusing the police watchdog of humiliating him and tipping off the media about the so-called raid. Now, earlier we spoke to the acting National Police Commissioner, Komotso Pahlani, and this is what he had to say.
I am going to respect the authorities competent to conduct investigations and enable the processing of any such matters through the courts of our country. As to the witch hunt, I will leave it to the processes that are to decide upon that. But where I am of the view that I am treated unfairly, unethically, and there is a concerted effort, a program that is aimed at attacking my integrity and ensuring that I am losing the focus on the work that I'm supposed to be doing as an ordinary South African.
Is there any evidence, or has any evidence been presented to you of any wrongdoing on your part?
It is allegation. Vague as they are, they remain allegations. And yesterday I have hosted officials from IPID in my office who presented two charges. So one, defeating the ends of justice, and secondly, corruption. The so-called corruption flows from the purchase of what is now commonly known as the music system or sound system in my house. The allegation there is that there is a service provider to the police that purchased it for me, and there is nothing at all to support that allegation, as I am clear that I have contracted this particular person, yes, who happened to be a service provider to the South African Police Service, but I have contracted her as an interior designer, which work she is doing, and it's a business relationship. She is to offer services. I am to pay for those services. She obtained the quotation from Sounds Great in Woodlands, provided me with that quotation, following which I approached my bank to process an EFT directly to Sounds Great in Woodlands. So if that is corruption, I don't know when did we introduce a new definition of corruption.
Who do you then think are these people making the allegations through IPID against you? Do you suspect political interference?
No, I'm not going to suggest political interference, and I don't have to repeat with who they are. They are very well known. You have got a certain gentleman commonly known as Paul O'Sullivan. You also have a colonel who happens to be working for us in the Eastern Cape, a Colonel Monsami. There are a number of them that I know are involved, and you now know that these are allegations made by the head of IPID and his people, despite the fact that they were given proof that this music system or sound system has been paid by me. They made it a point of parading the media before my house while I was still busy with the interview. It was breaking news. Famously, Karen Vaughan, Angelique, who always will be running such stories for these people, were on site, having more than 20 media people there while I'm still busy with an interview, and the allegation was the house is being raided. So I was surprised because the people who were to be doing the so-called raid were still with me in the office.
Do you view these, this alleged trial by media and these tip-offs to the media, do you view this as unethical behavior?
I have been subjected to this kind of conduct since 2009, where every time I am made to answer questions by the media, by people who are well known what their agenda is, and I have continuously cooperated with all. There was an investigation, for example, emanating from the allegations in 2010, which allegations are not different from the allegations that are being investigated by IPID. We have communicated the outcome of that report, which after it was concluded, it took the authorities more than a year to make it visible to me, and it was never communicated in public. I took the liberty of communicating it because I continue to be fielding questions on the so-called leakages of that particular report.
General Patlani, of course, at the center of this entire controversy is this 8 million rand home that you have or that you inhabit in the estate north of Pretoria. Can you clarify this, or do you feel a need to clarify the affordability factor of this house?
I'm a public servant, and at the level where I am, ordinarily we are to be subjected to a scrutiny, lifestyle audits. If at an opportune moment I am to do that, which I've already done, by the way, in securing my top secret clearance, I had to be scrutinized. And when that time comes, I'll subject myself to such. But the current developments and the continuous trial through the media cannot be tolerated.
Focus to Trump now. The Russian ambassador to South Africa, Mikhail Petrakov, has dismissed allegations of a bromance between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the President-elect Donald Trump of the US. However, Petrakov says that Russia is looking forward to improving relations with Trump and his administration.
Obama administration, we had 8 years divided in two very different periods. The first 4 years were, or rather they passed under the sign of resetting, an attempt to reset the relations. The other 4 years was a consistent work by the Obama administration on destroying the edifice and even the foundation of Russia-US relationship. And the fact you've mentioned, the decision on sending off 35 Russian diplomats was just one of the acts in the long chain of acts, including sanctions, including in deployment of ballistic missile defense elements close to our border, including the deployment of US troops in Europe close to our borders. So as I've said, this is an event in the whole chain of the same. But while formulating our reaction to sending off our diplomats, we took into account that it was the action of the outgoing administration. So we did not do anything in response, waiting for the incoming administration to deal with this matter. Well, basically it was not good because these diplomats were sent off right on the New Year Eve with their children. The Obama administration prevented us from using two facilities which are usually used by our children for winter holidays. So you can judge for yourself.
Yeah, that's never good. Never good. Wrong time of the year. I want to ask you, though, are you hopeful of a cessation in aggressive posture and improved relations under the next administration?
Well, the hope is there. At least Donald Trump spoke about the necessity to engage in a dialogue. This does not mean that we shall agree on each and every point, but dialogue is always good because it always helps to move forward. When Donald Trump was elected, President Putin sent him a message of congratulation, expressing hope that under new administration, by working together, we shall be able to lift our relationship out of the situation of crisis.
Nastarovia, His Excellency Petrakov. As the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland wraps up, the focus now shifts to the inauguration of the US President-elect Donald Trump later today. In plenary sessions and the corridors of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, during the week, concerns have been raised about the billionaire's ability to lead in a responsive and responsible manner. Now, this being the main theme of this year's meeting.
Europeans are still getting their heads around the implications of Brexit, and now the reality is dawning that Donald Trump will assume the most powerful position in the world in a matter of hours. Uncertainty about how he will interact with the wider world is giving people the jitters.
Above all these things, we have Trump coming there, we have Russia doing something, so all these forces are, in a certain sense, working against Europe.
During his campaign, Donald Trump spoke in negative terms about the role of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military force established by both the United States and Europe. Europeans are worried about Russia's position on the geopolitical landscape and China's slow but sure emergence as a powerful force, with some arguing that it's imperative that the NATO arrangement is strengthened.
I don't believe that NATO is obsolete. In a word, I believe two things. First, that there cannot be a divide between the US and the EU that would be a major fault for history. We are allies, we are friends, we are partners, and we need to stay so.
Mr. Trump's posturing to China and other countries around trade has also raised concerns about potential trade wars. Reducing trade would work against the talks here at WEF, which are focused on partnerships and working together for the greater good.
On trade, now everybody is talking about protectionism, closing the boundaries. It's a simple nonsense, because we know very well that in the next 30 years, 90% of the growth will come from outside Europe. If we close up, we make a problem to ourselves. So we need to go on with trade, but probably a different kind of trade.
The South African government has been more diplomatic about the prospect of a Trump presidency, hoping for continued positive relations.
We just hope that when it comes to Africa, when it comes to South Africa, he will have a positive disposition. We have everything that should make him have a positive disposition. We deal very well with America, we trade with America, and we are part of AGOA, and they are benefiting from AGOA. We are benefiting from AGOA, so there is mutual benefit there.
Donald Trump's campaign style and content have scared many into thinking that he'll be a leader of division. After being instituted as the 45th President of the United States, it remains to be seen whether those campaign utterances translate into reality. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Davos, Switzerland.
And therefore, we're running this poll. We're conducting it to find out what's your thoughts on the matter. Do you think that Donald Trump will make America great again? Well, so far, 222 votes in, 75% of you are saying no way that Donald Trump can make America great again. 25% are saying yes. Well, you can keep them coming. If there's any comments on that, we'll highlight those as well in relation to the question, will Trump make America great again? Or will it be a Trump card against us? Well, let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Human Rights Watch has released its annual report on threats to human rights around the world. Now, according to the Human Rights Watch, President-elect Donald Trump's victory, as well as the emergence of the far-right populist parties in Europe, have put post-war human rights systems at risk. Earlier, we spoke to the Human Rights Watch media director, Andrew Stroline, about this report.
90 to 100 different countries around the world, and we try to highlight the human rights abuses in those individual countries and also look at trends around the world where human rights and the situation for human rights is going globally. And this year we are highlighting the dangerous threat that the rise of xenophobic populism represents, in the form of Donald Trump, of course, but also in the form of others, particularly here in Europe, where I sit, people like Viktor Orban in Hungary, Vladimir Putin, and Tayyip Erdogan, of course, in Turkey. And we're also looking at threats this year in elections from people like Marine Le Pen and Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. Not to mention the Brexit catastrophe, which has a real xenophobic edge to it and always has.
Now, the report says that Donald Trump's campaign flirted proposals that could harm millions of people. What do you think? What are some of these proposals that stand out for you?
Well, some of his promises during the campaign were incredibly disturbing. Where do we even start? Let's start with torture. He promised to bring back torture. This is not only immoral, it is illegal under U.S. law, it is illegal in international law, and of course it just doesn't work. People will say anything to stop the torture, so it doesn't exactly work like it does in the movies, where you have a ticking time bomb and you torture the guy and free the princess. This is just crazy talk, and it's incredibly dangerous. And look, it's not just dangerous for the United States, it's dangerous for the world. Not only how U.S. foreign policy acts, but how other leaders take that as a cue. And we've already seen that in various cases where other leaders around the world are saying, well, it's the Trump era now, so anything goes.
the rise of the right is what they're calling it, Brexit, the voting in of Trump and so forth. How do you at Human Rights Watch view this threat, if one can call it that?
Well, it's an extremely serious threat. And I think the best way to put it is you have these people who consider themselves strong men, and you have a population that's worried about very serious issues. They're worried about economic issues. They're worried about security issues. They're worried about kind of cultural, cultural issues that are slightly more difficult to define. And people come along, politicians come along, and they try to take advantage of those fears. They try to play up those fears, and they try to play up those hatreds. It's fear-mongering, it's hate-mongering, and these strong men try to say, well, look, I can protect you. I will protect the people. I speak for the people. I speak for the majority. I speak for the nation, and I will save you. It is something that, frankly, we have seen before here in Europe, and it has had disastrous results.
Now, 2017, Andrew, is going to be a big election year in Europe, specifically where you are based. We see a lot of right-wing rhetoric on the rise in Europe, especially on the back of Brexit. Is this going to be a landmark year, and how do you view that?
Well, I think it's an absolutely critical year that we're looking forward to. So in March, we have the Netherlands heading into elections. Then in April, May, we have the presidential elections in France, followed by the legislative elections in France. Later in the year, we'll have elections in Germany. We may see elections in Italy, the Czech Republic, and other places as well. I think all of these elections are going to be really quite critical. I mean, particularly France and the Netherlands coming up here in the next few months. That's really going to to show us where Europe is headed. Is it going to head down the kind of Trumpist road of strong men and strong women, in the case of Marine Le Pen, and roll over, steamroller the rights of individuals in the name of the majority, the nation, the people? Or are we going to see a reaction against Trumpism and Putinism and have Europe stand up for the values that we hold universally, really?
Now, in relation to that annual report by Human Rights Watch on threats to human rights around the world, and who have listed Donald Trump as a threat to human rights, SABC News spoke to branding and advertising expert Andy Rice about Donald Trump as a brand.
Anything that you're prepared to invest some emotional energy into is a brand. And in politics, brands are extremely powerful. And we've seen, not just in the Trump scenario, but in other major political earthquakes in the last 2 years, we've seen brands at work there. Because if you accept that a brand contains a product within it, that's the kind of nuts and bolts and the functionality, but that's wrapped up in how you feel about that product, and that's the emotional side of things, then we see that the emotional strength of a brand will trump, sorry about the bad pun, the functionality of an opponent's product every time. So what did we see in...
So emotion works, basically.
Emotion works. What did we see in Brexit? We saw people who were canvassing for remaining in the European Union using pie charts and statistics and large amounts of money and functional, rational arguments. And they were up against a party that said, actually, we'd like to regain control of our own country. Now, that's an enormously powerful emotional message versus the functional reality of the Remainers. We saw the same with the rise of the EFF. The reality is that their proposition is almost entirely emotional. We've seen it now in the case of Trump, where I would argue that Hillary Clinton's principal arsenal of weapons was data, knowledge, facts, information. And Trump's arsenal was principally around saying, let's make America great again.
Did you know the big hole digging started in 1871 and ended on the 14th August 1914? The hole produced 2,722 kgs of diamonds. However, one diamond as huge as 490 carat of stone found in the open prior 1868 gave them the interest to dig. Extracted from 22.5 million tons of soil. Today, the hole sits at a breathtaking 214 meters deep. Kimberley Big Hole attracts tourists from all over the world, taking a vintage tram past the city, then cycling around the Big Hole.
Now, if you use a cell phone in this country and you use data, you probably heard the term #data must fall. Now, in a move to further lower the cost to communicate and increase digital and social connectivity in South Africa, Vodacom has launched Facebook Flex. Listen to this, Facebook Flex. Now, Vodacom says this is the first of many products to launch under the Vodacom Siyaka platform. Now, Vodacom Flex, or Facebook Flex rather, will give customers on the Vodacom network an opportunity to connect with friends and family using the basic version of Facebook for mahala, free, gratis. You don't have to pay for it, not a cent. Now, for more on that story, we joined here in studio by Vodacom Chief Executive of Consumer Business Unit, Nyimpi Mabunda. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you, Elvis.
That sounds almost too good to be true.
I know that, but it's really, we listen to our consumers, we listen to the feedback. You did mention #data must fall, and it's important for us that we have a listening ear to what the consumers want. So our research has indicated that Facebook is the biggest social network site in South Africa by far, and indeed for our subscribers, it's also the biggest. So when you talk about the cost of data, it's about where you're visiting or what do you do with that data. So we thought if we can have a relief and make Facebook free, then we go a long way in reducing the cost of data.
Now, how do you achieve that? Because Facebook, as it stands, obviously you need data to use it.
Yeah. So there's two things here which is important. Firstly, I need to acknowledge our partnership with Facebook. We've been working with them for a while, and because we have a global relationship, we were able to bring this service first for South Africa. And I'd like to acknowledge that because it took an investment on our side, but also an investment on their side. The second part is that it is not a full suite of Facebook services that you can get. So we've made it such that it's accessible. So when you are on a Vodacom network and you go to the Facebook website, it recognizes you as a Vodacom subscriber. Then you get an option. You default to the free Facebook, which is Facebook Flex. However, if you want the full suite, which includes photos and videos, then it gives you an option to pay for the data. So that's how we're able to achieve it.
So Facebook Flex, as it stands, there's no videos and there's no pictures, but you can communicate whatever you want on the Facebook as normal.
Absolutely. You can post, you can like, you can update, you can follow. All other services are available. And I really encourage you to try it, and you'll see that it is very good. The only thing is that because it uses a lot more data for pictures, if you want to upload pictures or view pictures and also for videos, then those are charged. However, let me also emphasize that although the pictures and videos are charged, they can be charged at very favorable rates if you buy bundles.
Much less than what you would pay in a normal Facebook, for data, of course.
Yes, much less, because if you buy bundles, you can really pay from as little as 50 cents. You can pay as little as 2 rands, depending on what kind of bundles that you go for. So you only have to go into *111#, and then you see the different bundles that you get, and it's really affordable.
I would have liked us to maybe have a visual of what it actually looks like, because I'm trying to paint a picture to myself in terms of this is what Facebook looked like and this is what Facebook Flex looked like. So it's exact original copy of Facebook without the videos and the pictures. Is it black and white or is it colorful?
No, it's color.
It's color.
Color.
Okay,
I
so-
wish I wasn't allowed to bring my phone here. I was going to show it to you, but I do encourage you to try it afterwards.
Now, in terms of data prices, let's just talk in general now, data prices. There's the hashtag we talked about, data must fall. When are they falling?
The good news is that they have fallen already. So if you look from 5 years ago, data prices on Vodacom network have come down over 70%. And in the last year already, it has come down about 13%. So they continue to fall, and we recognize that. However, and we've made these comments publicly before, is that it is not just the networks that can bring the prices of data down. We also need to collaborate with other stakeholders, particularly the government, in terms of access to spectrum and so on and so forth. The good news is that conversations are happening at that level with the regulators, because it is quite a complex industry. It's not as straightforward. But as Vodacom, we want data to fall, and we are making efforts to make it fall. And I can go into some of the detail, but it will fall.
Please do. Details, please.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So, for example, we launched new tariff structures, you know, for both our contract and our prepaid. So on prepaid, the tariff structure you go into now is a power bonus. So what that means that when you recharge, you get 50% back. Yeah, so that's number one. The second thing is that since September 2015, we've launched a product called Just For You, which is really personalized offers that we make for our subscribers based on their usage. Now, on the Just For You platform, which you get when you go to *123# if you're a Vodacom subscriber, the prices can be 10 times lower than the out-of-bundle prices. And I encourage people to go there on a daily basis to see what personalized offers have been put for them. Many people know about power hour, power bundles. So if you if you pay on a per minute basis on your normal subscription, you get a certain price. But however, if you say, for instance, you buy power hour bundle, you can pay 7 rands and you speak for the whole hour. You know, so what we've done is that we've got various packages, and it's called the principle of it is about bulk pricing.
Yes.
So if you commit to say I want to buy 20 megs or 100 megs, the prices actually comes down. You know?
But I want to challenge you on this one, Yimpi, because the point is, currently as it stands, for 1 gigabyte, we pay 150 rand here in South Africa. In our neighboring country next door, Namibia, 5 rand, or is it 11 rand? I think it's 11 rand. Per gig. Why is that?
You could pay much lower here. So, for instance, we do have packages for 59 rands. You could get a gig for 7 days, for 2 days. So there's promotional pricing. I think what people need to do is to differentiate between an out-of-bundle standard pricing to the various promotions that we have that really gives you value. So, for example, you could say that if I pay 29 rands and on a recharge, I get, for lack of a better example, 10 minutes. But what you haven't added there is that on the same day, you get 50% of the 29 rands in additional minutes to use. Okay? What you haven't then accounted for is that if you took that 29 rands and you went into *111# and you bought a bundle, you could get, for instance, 20 megs for as little as 4 rands. You know, so it is about how you use the platform that you've got, because for us, we analyze the user base and say that here are the various promotions and offers. And based on the bulk dealing, people can make very little. So what you also don't take into account, for instance, is that if you are a Vodacom subscriber, you could use our network between midnight and 5 and 5 in the morning, and at no charge, for example. So those are some of the various things. So I think we need to be holistic. And lastly, on this point, Elvis, is that it is hard to compare between countries because even spectrum prices are different. Yeah.
Well, that's where we got to leave it. But just briefly, so people want to go on to Facebook Flex, what do they do? If they're a subscriber, they must be a Vodacom subscriber.
You need to be a Vodacom subscriber. If you're not, you buy a SIM card, you subscribe, and you go into www.facebook.com, and you recognize a Vodacom subscriber, and then you choose whether you want the free version or the data version.
Thank you so much for us joining us here, Mr. Mabunda.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was the Vodacom Chief Executive of Consumer Business Unit, Pani Mabunda. He made Facebook fall. Well, we're still waiting for the data. We still got to discuss that some more, but that's where we got to leave it. We'll take a break. We'll be right back with your sports news.
Thank you.
We are one of the 22 high-burden countries, and out of that, we're number 6, following countries like India, China, and with huge population.
Cough, night sweats, weight loss, and fever, and cough being the most important of those. So, and especially if the cough lasts for more than 3 weeks, then you really have to worry and get tested for TB.
The motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use the elbow.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
And a hearty welcome back to you. My name is Kendall Makhamati. Time being 20 minutes to 12 on this Friday morning, almost the end of the month. And the Australian Open has been in full swing for a few days now. And that's where top seed Andy Murray, who hopes to finally win this Open tennis tournament after finishing runner-up 5 times, has advanced to the 4th round after a comprehensive victory over American Sam Carey. That Britain eased through in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2, 6-4. He'll now meet world number 50, Germany's Mischa Zverev. Former champion Stan Wawrinka recovered from a slow start to advance to the 4th round with a 4-set victory over Viktor Troicki.
The victory for Murray has now made him the overwhelming favourite to win the title in Melbourne. He dealt well with the big serving quarry, who played some excellent tennis in the first set, with his powerful forehand causing problems for Murray. The Brit eventually got the break and wrapped up the set 6-4. After playing some superb tennis, Murray snatched a break early in the second set before adding another later. With the American struggling, he wrapped up the set 6-2. Murray enjoyed a similar start to the third set, breaking Quarry in his opening service game. After a battle at 4-all, Quarry gave the game away as he hit a volley into the net. The world number 1 went on to break serve on his 5th break point and served out to win 6-4, 6-2, 6-4 in 1 hour and 59 minutes. Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova reached the 4th round after she stunned 11th seed Elina Svitolina. The Russian won the opening set 7-5, but she allowed the Ukrainian to hit back and level matters, winning the second 6-4. However, Pavlyuchenkova stormed to a 5-2 lead in the decider. She finally clinched victory on her 5th match point for a 7-5, 4-6, 6-3 victory. The 24th seed will now face 8th seed Svetlana Kuznetsova of Russia. Coco van der Wey rallied from a breakdown in the deciding set to move past Eugenie Bouchard 6-4, 36, 7-5. She'll now face defending champion and world number 1 Angelika Kerber. The American dominated on serve. She needed just one break opportunity to clinch the first set. Bouchard fought back in the second game of the second set to ensure the match went into a decider. However, the 26-year-old broke back in the 8th game and went on to clinch victory in 2 hours, 21 minutes. Kerber wasted no time as she breezed into the 4th round. She lost only 4 games to beat Kristina Pliskova 6-love, 6-4. She lost her composure for a while in the second set, resulting in Pliskova winning 4 games. However, the German held strong to see off the unseeded Czech in just 55 minutes.
Kerber taking care of business.
SABC News.
Looks like it's going to be a very exciting weekend with the Australian Open. Now, move on to the other news-making headlines today. South Africa is set to field a new-look side to face Sri Lanka in a 3-match T20 series. The last time these two sides met was at the World T20 tournament in India last March, and the Proteas won emphatically by 8 wickets. The match starts at 6 in the evening, and tickets have already been sold out for the first of this 3-match series. To be played at SuperSport Park in Centurion with a brand-new skipper, Farhan Behardien, taking the reins. SABC cricket analyst Lunga Kupiso spoke to Sports Live last night.
Right now, for South African cricket lovers, it is an exciting time because there's new fresh blood that's coming through the system, and everybody's excited to see what they're going to bring to the table. For those of us that have had the opportunity to follow the guys, how they play in the domestic setup, we know that they're exciting guys, and they on a good day, if all of them fire, well, Sri Lanka are going to get battered again.
I mean, we mentioned that it's a good team. I mean, you know most of the guys as well. I mean, as you mentioned, local cricket. Then the question comes in, we've got T20, I think, coming up soon. We've got 50 championships coming up soon. Is this the team are we looking maybe to say these are the ones that we might be looking for to choose those tournaments? Or are we saying, because again, the names are not the big names we're used to, or are we saying, you know what, Sri Lanka is not that big of a challenge, but we know how dangerous they are in the shorter format of the game. Are we looking at Domingo saying this is the team for him, he's trying to build something?
Well, I think if you are to look at the whole T20 scene, it's not a game that is too different from the domestic scene of any country, if you've got a strong setup of domestic cricket. So guys in our domestic system can just step into the T20 front in the international cricketing scene, and they'd be able to match because it's not as taxing as Test cricket is. So, and also Russell Domingo is looking at extending the reach that he has within the squad. And I'm pretty sure this is one of those opportunities that he has, rare opportunities that he has where he can rest some key players, because the 2017-2018 season is going to be a long one. They go to New Zealand, they've got the Champions Trophy in England in June, and they've got the tour of England as well as going down to Australia to play against Australia.
I mean, you're looking at these guys over the past couple of days, they've been warming, not warming up, you know, I'm going to say pushing. I mean, shorter form of the game, 20 overs, you really don't push yourself. New captain, Farhan Behardien. Wayne Parnell again, I see might get a run. Let's look into the squad. I mean, here are some of the names as you have in front of you. Farhan, captain, fair enough. In the absence of AB, that's probably the right decision to make. Tiernas de Bruin, quite a good player. Reza Hendricks, another good player. Imran Tahiri, he gets a run once again. Legend. I know he's been, you know, wishing to get the run, especially after being left out of the Test series against Australia and coming back. Mangaliso Mosehle, that for me is an exciting player.
Mangi is one of those players where every time he goes out into the middle and he doesn't fire, you almost get frustrated as a supporter because you know how good he is. I mean, he single-handedly took the Titans to victory in the last T20 domestic competition, other than the one this year that we had the last season. 2016, 2017, getting confused there. So he's an exciting player, and it's really a player that if he does well in this series, I can't see a reason why he's going to get left behind. And he almost reminds me of the standing captain in Farhan Behardien. He's also that kind of a player that he's not consistent in scoring runs, but when he scores runs, it's brilliant.
Andile Petlogwai, I'm excited to see him come back into the fold. I mean, I was actually complaining a bit, saying, geez, instead of Abbott, Andile had a good run in the one-day series. Why not give Petlogwai another run? In fact, not Abbott, rather, the kid that replaced Abbott. Why not give Petlogwai a run to replace him and give him a run in the Test match?
Well, look, Test cricket is harder than the limited version of the game. So it is a little bit of a step up. And for Russell Domingo, he has already seen what expertise Petlogwai brings to the side, and he knows what he's capable of. And as he said in Cape Town, after that whole scandal, I'm going to call it, of the guy signing Colpex, he said he wants to make sure that the guys that he's eyeing, he gives an opportunity so that they know that there's no need for them to get on a plane, the first plane out, and go sign Colpack deals. So it is an opportunity for him to stretch his Proteas reach. It will be good to see what he does in the T20 version of the game, because and there's also a little bit of added expectations from us as supporters of the game, because he did so well in that Australian series.
Pangi as well, getting a run after rather some not so good news over the past couple of months.
Yeah. Pangi hasn't really done well according to Pangi's standards, to say the least. And a lot of people are questioning whether the captaincy that he took over for the T20 season that we've just had was perhaps the added pressure that he couldn't handle as a captain. All will tell. He's always an exciting guy, a guy that gives it 120% on any day. So that will be exciting, and he brings in experience. So those are the kind of guys that Farhan Behardien is going to need to go to during the game situation. As he said in his press conference, it's not my team. It's a team that I want guys to come in and freely express themselves. So the guys like Imran Tahi, Aaron Pangiso as well, they're going to come in and they're going to be needed to throw in their weight there around.
Any names stand out from you from that list as far as this team is concerned, or as you're saying, let's see who, well, Russell's giving everyone a run and trying to see what comes out?
I'm excited to see what Tinus de Bruin does because he's done so well domestically. I want to see if that international cricket label is going to perhaps unsettle him, and if it doesn't, to be incredible to see what he does. Mangaliso Mosehle, when he strikes it beautifully. So that will be interesting to see as well. Reza Hendricks of the Lions, he's also a great star, upcoming star for South African cricket. Dane Patterson of the Cape Cobras, also it will be good. John Smarts of the Warriors, Captain Cool. He's done well with the Warriors, and they were unlucky to lose out to the Titans in the final of the T20. It will be good as well to see what he does, and I think those five.
Look, we're running out of time. The sticky situation, the side on the thorn of all things South African cricket right now, and I'm going to say it with a big smile on my face. A.B. de Villiers is not Colpack. In the past 2 days, first he announced he's not going to be interested in New Zealand playing Test. Yesterday, the following day, announced again, oh, I'm not interested in the English Test series. I'm going to play IPL. The debate has been raging. Why, AB, why?
Well, I wouldn't say he's not interested in the New Zealand series, and I think for him, he's looking at family, he's looking at age, and he's doing the mathematics. The guys that have gone before me, when they took on a similar amount of a workload, because AB played across all formats, and he was highly involved at any particular point of the game. So when he was involved, that's a lot of pressure that he has to take on. So he sees this as an opportunity for him to allow other guys to lead because they're capable to lead, and also extend
my question is, I mean, we're discussing, just to our viewers so they're aware, we're discussing this before we came on air. I spoke about respecting Abbott, who came out outright and said, look, I need to make money for my family. My contract with Colpack is going to secure 4 years for my family, put food on my table. AB has come out, 2 press conferences. Firstly, he speaks about, I won't be able to play for New Zealand. I need to get back into form. Then he comes out, I'm not going to play for England. I need to regain form. I'll go to IPL. Why doesn't AB play in Sunfoil? If he wants to regain form, South Africans only see AB when he's wearing a South African cricket jersey. Why don't you see him wearing a Lions or a Highfield jersey and let him play for South Africa?
I'll put it short, sweet and brief. There is a better reward in getting injured, playing for $10 million, than playing and getting injured for 10,000 rands.
Is it fair, though? I mean, I like that answer. I mean, it's an honest answer. The question is, though, the paying public, you and my kids wants to go watch AB play. To be fair there, to be honest, surely AB could have made a better decision.
Well, we could sit here and say the decision he's made is not a better decision in as far as South Africa is concerned, but he'll sit on the opposite side and say the decision I made is better for my family.
Would I rather than AB say, look, I'm not going to play Test cricket any longer. Let me just concentrate on one day. Because I would have respected him if he says that instead of saying, I'll play IPL, but I'm not going to play local cricket.
I think that's the most frustrating part, is that everybody is looking to AB because we've missed him over this past 5 months. We've missed seeing him in the Proteas side, and everybody is just anxiously waiting for him to return. And he's not being clear on what his intentions are. And the most frustrating part is every time he comes out, it seems like it's the AB show.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water.
because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.